$126 breakthrough. The Red Queen also took advantage of this period of time to control the mechanical fly to investigate the entire building, and indeed discovered the hidden bomb. Google search reading. And the power of bombs. Taiwan Novel Network. According to the calculations of the Red Queen, it is enough to level the entire building, which means that once it explodes, no one will be able to leave here alive. Such a result made Jiujiu very helpless, and he couldn't help but think about how to break the current situation. At this moment, Kane continued. Yi. I don't want to die with you here, I also want to live. And your strength is too strong, so I was forced to make such an arrangement. I think we can have a good talk, what do you think? Jiujiu had no choice but to delay for a while, shrugged and said. Okay. Kane, you win. Tell me, how do you want to talk? What to talk about? Until this moment, Jiujiu still refused to give up. While talking nonsense with Kane, he communicated with the Red Queen, and then thought about any way to deal with Kane in a foolproof way. Hearing Jiujiu's submission, Kane laughed heartily and said after a while. Haha. You are very wise, Yi. In fact, my request is very simple, that is, I want it. Having said this, Kane's expression became extremely solemn, and he paused and continued. I want your mechanical creature manufacturing blueprints. As long as you give them to me, I will let you leave here. How about that? Hearing this, Jiujiu rolled his eyes and said to himself that Kane was a big liar. Give you the drawings and you promise to let us go. How can you let us go? After you get what you want, will you kindly get on the helicopter and kill me as a threat without pressing the detonator? Even if you, Kane, are trustworthy, are you going to let us people just stay in this city full of zombies and fend for ourselves? Thinking of this, Jiujiu simply looked like he was thinking, firstly to delay time, and secondly to take advantage of this opportunity to quickly communicate with the Red Queen. Red Queen, is there any way to stop Kane from pressing the detonator? Sorry, sir. Kane was very careful. His finger was always on the detonator button. Even if the mechanical dog could kill Kane with one blow, there was no guarantee that his finger would not press the detonator button at the moment of death. Moreover, when the mechanical dog fires energy bullets, it will open its mouth. Such an obvious action, according to Kane's cautious and crazy character, will press the button when the mechanical dog opens its mouth. So, sir, it can't be done. After discussing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but sigh secretly, but he still felt very unwilling to do so. I also quickly flashed through my mind how the protagonists in the same situations in the movies and TV shows they had watched solved such dead ends. Finally, Jiujiu thought of a plot. What if I could interrupt Kane's finger on the button with one blow, or hit Kane's wrist? Is it possible to stop Kane from detonating the bomb? Thinking of this, Jiujiu hurriedly communicated with Queen Hong and asked. Red Queen, if there was a way to break Kane's fingers or hit his wrist with one blow, would it be possible to prevent Kane from detonating the bomb? Well. Please wait a moment, sir, I want to calculate the feasibility of this method. A few seconds later, the Red Queen said with a hint of joy. Congratulations, sir, your plan has a 50% success rate, but... Hearing this, Jiujiu immediately became happy. After seeing the red, he still didn't care and hurriedly asked in his mind. But what? Red Queen, tell me quickly. Sir, have you never thought about how you can shoot a bullet to break Kane's fingers or hit Kane's wrist without Kane noticing? Hearing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but be stunned, but he had never thought about this problem. You know, he didn't have snipers around. How to operate this? Everyone including 5 mechanical dogs are in front of Kane, what to do? Thinking of this, Jiujiu silently calculated in his mind what he currently had. Mechanical crossbow. No, Kane watched, unable to move. Mechanical dog. Kane is also always paying attention. Mechanical trap. Not to mention taking it out from space, even if it can be taken out and thrown out, there will still be a time for it to bounce up and launch, which is enough for Kane to press the button. Mechanical flies. Wait, mechanical fly. Thinking of this, Jiujiu couldn't help but get excited. Yes. The mechanical fly is outside, and it is so small that people with poor eyesight cannot spot it. The most important thing is that even if they see it, no one will take a fly seriously, right? Thinking of this, Jiujiu thought that the mechanical fly was just a surveillance tool, but it had no offensive power. Attack power. This is a problem. So, how to convert mechanical flies into offensive power? Thinking of this, Jiujiu suddenly had an idea. He overlooked one question. Although the mechanical fly is small, it is made of all metal. What if the mechanical fly sprinted at full speed from 100 meters away and crashed into Kane's fingers or wrist at high speed? Thinking of this, Jiujiu immediately communicated with Red Queen. Red Queen, what if I let you control the mechanical fly, accelerate and sprint to hit Kane's wrist? Will Kane release the detonator because of the sudden severe pain? Can it be done this way? Wait, let me test the destructive power of the mechanical fly flying at full speed. Just then, Kane seemed to be impatient and said with a very bad face. What do you think? As long as you make the blueprint for me, I promise to let you go. Hearing this, Jiujiu understood that Red Queen's test would take time, so he deliberately acted helpless, spread his hands and said, I really want to agree to your conditions, but these mechanical dogs are all made by the organization. I am just a combatant. Where did the blueprint come from? Hearing this, Kane couldn't help but be half believing and half doubting. To be honest, if what Jiujiu said about his organization was true, Kane would be willing to believe that what Jiujiu said was true. After all, it is not only Umbrella, but also other companies. For combatants, whether it is a weapon or a tool, they just need to know how to use it. How it is made, is it important to combatants? Thinking of this, Kane changed his mind and said to Jiujiu, Okay, I will trust you for now. But I can change a condition, that is. After that, Kane raised the detonator in his hand as if to protest, and said to Jiujiu, You hand over these mechanical creatures to me, and I promise to let you go, how about it? This condition is not difficult to meet, right? Hearing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but laugh at Kane's shamelessness. $127 Kane and hashtag 039, deftly counterattack. However, he did not show it. In order to continue to delay time, Jiujiu looked embarrassed and said, This. Mr. Kane, your conditions make it very difficult for me to deal with. You know. Taiwan Novel Network. There was a deliberate pause to attract Kane's attention because he had already heard the news from the Red Queen. Gentlemen. After losing 2 mechanical flies, you got accurate data, congratulations sir. Your plan is completely implementable. I never expected that the power of such a small thing hitting at full speed is comparable to the power of a pistol bullet. Hearing this, Jiujiu was not happy at all. He immediately told the Red Queen that he would attract Kane's attention, and the Red Queen controlled the mechanical fly to attack Kane. In order to ensure the success rate, Jiujiu even sacrificed 2 mechanical flies to attack Kane together. Although the mechanical fly is small in size, it is not slow at full speed. Its speed per second is at least as fast as a pistol bullet. Anyway, among everyone present, only Jiujiu and Alice could detect the mechanical fly sprinting at full speed. Alice was very curious about this little thing that was almost invisible to the naked eye, but she didn't know what it was. More than 100 meters away, in less than a second, 2 mechanical flies hit Kane's left wrist hard. The reason for this was also because when Kane saw Jiujiu and others being held, the pistol in his right hand stopped pointing at Ashford's head. Otherwise, the left wrist would not have been bruised to pieces by a mechanical fly. The severe pain immediately made Kane scream miserably. He could no longer hold the detonator in his left hand due to the severe pain and immediately fell to the ground. Jiujiu was afraid that the detonator would touch the button and detonate the bomb if it fell to the ground, so he immediately jumped forward in the blink of an eye from a distance of more than 10 meters. He stretched out his hand to fish out the detonator and put it into the space, and then fiercely he breathed a sigh of relief. Kane also realized at this time that he was being attacked by Jiujiu, and regardless of the pain in his left hand, he raised his hand to shoot Jiujiu, who was lying on his back. Unfortunately, with the mechanical dog on his side, he would not be allowed to hurt Jiujiu. At this critical moment, Wolf Warrior No. 1, who was almost moving together with Jiujiu, rushed forward, swung his tail unceremoniously, and stabbed Kane's right hand with a sharp tail stinger. Kane let out a shrill scream again. He could no longer hold the pistol, and it fell down and Jiujiu reached out to catch it. Jiujiu also stood up at this time, raised his hand and punched Kane hard on the chin. Kane's previous scream was still in his throat, and the next scream sounded again, but it only lasted half a sound before it got stuck in his throat. He was also hit backwards and fell by Jiujiu's huge strength on the ground. But it was Jiujiu's punch that forced his mouth shut, making him unable to scream even if he wanted to. Kane fell to the ground and struggled to sit up with his elbows for a long time. It was obvious that both his wrists were injured, making it difficult for him to exert force on his hands. For such people, Jiujiu would not have the slightest mercy. Considering what the Umbrella Company had done to the world, it would not be an exaggeration to let them all go to hell. Taking a step forward, Jiujiu reached out and grabbed Kane's collar, and with just a little force, he lifted him up. This hand immediately made Carlos and others take a breath. No wonder they were so surprised. Jiujiu is only 175 centimeters tall, but he can lift a man who is nearly 1.8 m tall with one hand. How much strength is this? Lifting Kane up, Jiujiu carried Kane to the edge of the building, pointed at the red sky in the distant city, and asked in a deep voice. This is the crime committed by your Umbrella Company. Don't you feel guilty when you see a city destroyed like this? Hearing this, Kane spread his hands by his side and turned his head with difficulty to glance at the sky that was obviously red with fire. He smiled and turned back and said, "Hey. Human evolution is always accompanied by destruction. What's there to feel guilty about?" Hearing this, not only Jiujiu was depressed, but Alice and others were also filled with anger, wanting to rush forward and give Kane 1,000 cuts. Jiujiu didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore, and simply said to Kane decisively, "Oh, really? Then you will be destroyed together with this city. Goodbye. No, never see you again." After saying that, Jiujiu threw Kane's body out like a torn sack. Kane's body was thrown out by Jiujiu. He first glanced at the sky dozens of meters below him in panic, then turned back to look at Jiujiu strangely. Suddenly, regardless of the pain in his hand, he raised his hand and put it on his ear and said, Immediately, launch black eggs for me and destroy the entire raccoon city." Hee hee, ha ha. Kane had no intention of hiding what he said from Jiujiu. His voice was not loud but just enough for Jiujiu to hear. Jiujiu was dumbfounded for a moment, and then he reacted. His face changed wildly and he shouted to the people behind him. "Hurry up, get in the helicopter and get out of here, Black Egg is coming." Hearing this, Alice and others also changed their expressions and immediately rushed towards the helicopter parked on the roof. Unfortunately, when they came to the helicopter, everyone was stunned on the spot again. Only LJ rushed onto the helicopter regardless, and Angela and Dr. Ashford were already waiting in the helicopter. The reason why everyone stopped was because the helicopter was not very big, and it could only take 10 people at most at a time, and that was only possible if everyone squeezed together. But even so, what about the remaining 10 people? Jiujiu was very depressed when he saw this situation. He didn't care, and at most he could go back, but what about the rest of the people? It wasn't that Jiujiu was a saint, but because if all these people were alive, that would be a full 20,000 experience points. Some were level 1 experience points. He really couldn't bear to let them go, and more importantly, if he continued to stay in this world for a full year, there might be countless follow-up tasks. At this time, Jiujiu also understood Kane's sinister intentions. Kane only left such a small helicopter, and it was obvious that he didn't intend to let Jiujiu and the others leave here. The strange smile before the moment was also mocking Jiujiu and the others. He wanted to see the situation where Jiujiu and his group killed each other. It was scary to think about it. If it really came to a last resort, Jiujiu couldn't believe that among the 20 people on his side, would they fight to get on the plane, push each other, and shoot each other in order to survive. Just as Jiujiu was struggling, the sound of a helicopter propeller suddenly came from the sky not far away. Jiujiu immediately shouted inwardly, "There's help." He looked up hurriedly and saw a helicopter transport plane flying over $128. First conversation with Ada Wong. The door of the helicopter was wide open. A familiar red figure that Jiujiu had been thinking about was holding the safety rope in front of the door with one hand, looking at Jiujiu and others. Who else could it be but Ada Wong? At this moment, Jiujiu felt that his heartbeat was beating wildly and uncontrollably, and a voice in his heart shouted. Dead, dead. My goddess is coming. The next moment, the helicopter flew over the heads of everyone and landed steadily. Google search reading. Jiujiu stared at Ada Wong's figure on the helicopter, and wanted to rush up and have a close contact with Ada Wong. Before the helicopter stopped, Ada Wong stood in front of the door and waved to everyone, signaling everyone to get into the helicopter quickly. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. What are you waiting for? The goddess is right in front of you. Jiujiu immediately called everyone to get on the helicopter. He turned around and picked up Dr. Ashford and carried him on his shoulders, holding his wheelchair in one hand, and asked Angela to follow him on the helicopter. Although Jiujiu was still wondering why Ada Wong was here at this time. But he knew that Ada Wong had no good feelings for what the umbrella company did, and on the contrary, he had hatred. No matter why Ada Wong appeared here at this time, let's leave here first. Everyone got on the wide transport plane and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Naturally, Jiujiu also put the remaining mechanical flies and 5 mechanical dogs into the space, and finally got on the transport plane. Before everyone was fully seated, the helicopter had taken off again and flew quickly out of Raccoon City. The transport plane had only flown a few dozen kilometers, and a small black egg with a tail flame had flown over, almost brushing past the transport plane. Seeing this little thing flying past the transport plane, everyone couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Then, they all looked at King Ada with gratitude, who was wearing a red cheongsam and had a cool expression. At this moment, the system voice in Jiujiu's mind sounded again. Congratulations to the host for completing Hidden Mission 10. Smash the ambush arranged by Kane, ensure that at least half of the personnel survive, and the main characters Alice, Carlos, Jill, Ashford, and Angela survive, and you can get 20,000 experience rewards. Note, for each main character who dies, the experience will be reduced by 1,000. Tip, the host's level is upgraded, and the current level is 17, with strength and physical strength increased by 5 each, intelligence, spirit, and agility increased by 1 each, which have been automatically allocated to the attribute panel. Please check the details yourself. The level was raised again, which diverted Jiujiu's attention. He quickly opened the system panel in his mind to check. Name, Jiujiu. Age, 16. Occupation, mechanical hunter. Level 17, 6300/16,000. Attributes. Strength, 5. Vital strength, 5. Intelligence, 19. Spirit, 19. Agility, 19. Speed, 27 meters per second. Energy, 1,900, 19 points/minute recovery speed. Occupational talents and skills. 1. Intermediate Combat Master. 2. Intermediate Mechanical Master. Pet, Mechanical Dog, Wolf Warrior *2. Mount, Wind Chaser. Special Space, Mechanical Manufacturing Space 1000 square meters, Traps *30, Spider Silk, Mechanical Flies *10, Wolf Pack, 6. Drawings, 0. Special Permissions, 0. Note, time-space shuttle function remaining 0 times. After the transport plane continued to fly more than 10 kilometers, a shocking explosion suddenly came from Raccoon City, which was almost 100 kilometers behind. After the explosion, a wave of air radiated in all directions. Fortunately, the transport plane was already nearly 100 kilometers away from Raccoon City. Although the air wave caught up with the transport fuselage, it was already at the end of its strength. When the air wave blew onto the transport plane, it just made the fuselage of the transport plane tremble violently for a while. The feeling of surviving a disaster rose in everyone's heart. Many people's faces turned pale with fear, and the cabin suddenly became silent. Until then, Ada Wong walked in front of Jiujiu, stretched out his hand and said to Jiujiu generously, "Let me introduce myself, my name is Ada Wong, and I am a security officer of Umbrella Company." Hearing this, Jiujiu raised his head and looked at Ada Wong, and after he quickly stretched out his hand and held Ada Wong's hand together, and said incoherently, "Oh, hello, Ada Wong. I am, My name is Jiujiu, you can call me Yi. Hee hee. Seeing this, Ada Wong didn't care, let go of his hand and sat down next to Jiujiu, and continued. I saw your wonderful battle in Raccoon City, it was amazing. Are you a soldier? Jiujiu hasn't coming back to his senses, he answered subconsciously. Oh, no. I am. Speaking of this, Jiujiu reacted suddenly and almost told the truth that he was a high school student. He cursed himself for not being able to concentrate enough and continued. Oh, well, I came from S.H.I.E.L.D. and am an agent of the organization, specializing in investigating the Umbrella Corporation. Hearing this, Ada Wong knew that Jiujiu was not telling the truth, but he did not intend to continue asking questions, and change the subject. Oh, S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, can you tell me what you are going to do next? Continue to collect evidence to expose Umbrella? Or continue to attack the power of Umbrella? After a pause, without waiting for Jiujiu to come back, Ada Wong continued. After all, so many Umbrella employees died in your hands. I believe that Umbrella will not let you go easily, right? Hearing the meaning of Ada Wong's words, Jiujiu couldn't help but feel moved. The thread in Ada Wong's words was very obscure, but Jiujiu understood it. And he himself didn't know the detailed location of Umbrella's bases in other cities. Even with Red Queen's help, it would not be found in a short time. It's not that Red Queen is not powerful, but although Red Queen can control the network, it is an independent system in Raccoon City. As for the systems of other bases, he has no contact and doesn't know the specific address. However, there is Ada Wong who knows Umbrella very well in front of him, so why should he go far to look for it? Thinking of this, Jiujiu's expression suddenly became serious, and he said to Ada Wong. Do you believe it? This disaster is just the beginning, and then the whole world will fall into this virus crisis. Of course, I mean not only the natural spread of the virus, but also the possibility of human factors. Do you understand what I mean? Hearing this, Ada Wong was stunned. He immediately thought of the so-called senior executives of Umbrella. In order for them to become the high-ranking officials, what can't they do? Among them, didn't his parents and the real founder of Umbrella Company die in such an unclear way? Thinking of this, Ada Wong nodded and said sadly. You are right. They can do anything inhumane to achieve their goals. But what can they do, or who can stop them from doing this? Hearing this, Jiujiu was also stunned. He just wondered how Ada Wong knew what Isaac and others were going to do, and then he reacted. $129 determine the next course of action. After all, King Ada and Alice are at different levels, so what's so surprising about knowing some secrets? Later, Jiujiu had the intention to bring King Ada to his side now, so he said. King Ada, there is no need to be so pessimistic. Don't forget, we also have Dr. Ashford here who researched the T-virus. As long as we can find a protective Umbrella base and use the research equipment in the base, maybe we can develop an antidote to the virus. After a pause, Jiujiu continued. So, are you willing to help us find a base whose protective umbrella is temporarily incalculable and develop an antidote to the virus? Hearing this, King Ada was also surprised. She really didn't expect Jiujiu to have such unbridled ideas. Google search reading. However, after thinking about it, King Ada felt that Jiujiu's idea was really possible. After all, nothing in this world is absolutely invincible. Since there is a virus, it is not unusual to have a corresponding antidote, right? Thinking of this, King Ada looked at Dr. Ashford and asked. Dr. Ashford, you said you might be able to develop an antidote to the T-virus. Are you sure? Hearing this, Ashford was stunned for a moment, then nodded seriously and then shook his head and said. If I have enough experimental equipment and T-virus stock solution, I can try to create a targeted antidote. The probability of success is still high, but... Others couldn't understand the meaning of the words and deeds, but why couldn't King Ada and Jiujiu understand it? After King Ada received Ashford's confirmation, he turned back and looked at Jiujiu with a searching look. Jiujiu shrugged his shoulders and decided not to hide it anymore, so he said. That. Actually, Spencer was not able to take the original virus solution out of the hive at first, I took it away. However, my purpose is not for money like him, but to develop an antidote for the virus based on the original virus solution. As soon as Jiujiu finished speaking, everyone looked at Jiujiu in shock, especially Alice, who personally participated in the Battle of the Hive, feeling inexplicably shocked. In fact, even though Jiujiu had already said that he did not take the virus for money, everyone still had a creepy feeling. Everyone has witnessed the virus disaster in Raccoon City and is deeply afraid of the power of the virus. Ashford was different. He was surprised at first and then asked in surprise, "Are you telling the truth? Yi, do you have the virus stock solution there?" Jiujiu nodded when he heard this, and said to everyone seriously, "Yes. So, next, our goal is to find the research base of an umbrella company, snatch him away, and protect Dr. Ashford. Allow him to safely develop an antidote to the virus to solve the possible global virus crisis." Having said this, Jiujiu paused and continued. "So, I ask everyone to join me in completing this mission. What do you think?" Hearing this, everyone present became excited and expressed their willingness to join Jiujiu's actions. There is no way, Americans like heroic ideas, and of course everyone is willing to do something absolutely righteous like this that has the potential to save the world. Of course, the main reason is actually, along with Jiujiu, we have the perverted and powerful Jiujiu leading everyone, and Dr. Ashford who can develop an antidote to the virus. In this way, everyone's lives are guaranteed. Isn't it a matter of killing two birds with one stone? King Ada first lowered his head and thought for a while, then asked another question. "I very much agree with your proposal, Yi. However, you seem to have ignored the existence and strength of the protective umbrella. Do you think they will just let you occupy a base and ignore it?" Hearing this, everyone except Jiujiu was stunned, and the same question arose in their hearts. Jiujiu answered confidently, "I have absolute confidence that by that time, the protective umbrella will have no time to worry about our existence in the occupied base." Having said this, Jiujiu paused and raised a finger and said, "First, before I occupy the base, I will control the base's external network and communication equipment so that they cannot pass on the news of our attack on the base." After finishing speaking, he emphasized again as if he was afraid that everyone would not believe it. "Yes. I'm sure, I can do it." After speaking, Jiujiu glanced at everyone and saw that everyone was listening to him attentively, and continued. "Second, I am sure that the umbrella company will soon release the T-virus into major cities in most countries around the world, triggering a global virus disaster. Then, do they still have that much power and time to find a base far away from their headquarters?" Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but nod in agreement, even King Ada nodded in agreement. Seeing that everyone agreed with his point of view, Jiujiu turned his head and looked at King Ada and asked, "Since everyone thinks what I said is right, then, Ms. Ada Wong, please mark all the umbrella bases around the world on this tablet." While speaking, Jiujiu had taken out a tablet computer from the space and handed it to King Ada. Everyone was used to seeing Jiujiu's ability to take things out of thin air. After all, everyone had seen it on the way to attack the municipal building. Everyone attributed Jiujiu's ability to some magical superpower. After all, in this world, everyone has come into contact with superpowers from movies. Then, it is understandable that Jiujiu came from a mysterious organization that no one has ever heard of, and has superpowers. Ada Wong took the tablet and opened it, and a global map immediately appeared on it. Without any hesitation, Ada Wong carefully recalled and thought, while pulling the map, marking all the bases of the umbrella company on it. 10 minutes later, Ada Wong solemnly handed the tablet to Jiujiu, and said, "It's about everyone's life and death, please choose carefully." Reaching out to take the tablet, Jiujiu nodded, while communicating with Red Queen in his mind, asking her to quickly calculate and select the base that is most beneficial to everyone, while pretending to pull the map to look at it. The computing power of Red Queen was terrifying, and after being recovered by the system, its functions were fully enhanced. It only took a few minutes for Red Queen to make the most suitable choice for everyone, which was an underground base in an uninhabited area of Las Vegas. When Jiujiu knew that Red Queen had chosen this base for him, he was also surprised. $130 capture base. In the movie, Isaac's clone 3 years later was in this base, researching the evolution of zombies and enhanced zombies. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. It was also there that Isaac attacked Alice and Claire's convoy with enhanced zombies, and finally Alice and the surviving Claire and Carlos attacked the base. Thinking of this, Jiujiu also understood why Red Queen chose that base. First, it is not too far away from everyone, and it won't take much time to get there. Second, there are not too many umbrella guards there, which is easy to deal with. Third, the equipment needed for the experiment there is very complete, enough for Ashford to carry out experiments. After thinking it through, Jiujiu stretched out his hand to enlarge the base map of Las Vegas to the maximum, and pointed out. Taiwan Novel Network. Let's go here. The underground base in Las Vegas. Hearing this, Ada Wong looked at the base in Las Vegas on the tablet, and his eyes showed excitement. The fuel of the transport plane was not enough for everyone to fly directly to Las Vegas, and they landed on the outskirts of a town. Everyone walked into the town, bought a vehicle here, and went to Las Vegas. Of course, for a big guy like a transport plane, Jiujiu would naturally not abandon it here. Not to mention the materials on this big guy, Jiujiu is very useful, even if it is to prevent the umbrella from tracking everyone, Jiujiu will not throw it here. Of course, the biggest flaw, everyone's whereabouts, Jiujiu also let Red Queen control all the cameras here and erase everyone's whereabouts from the internet. Jiujiu asked Hongho to tamper with the bank card information to pay for the purchase of the vehicle. For this immoral behavior, Jiujiu did not feel the slightest guilt. Anyway, it won't be long before no one cares about money anymore. The journey to Las Vegas was very smooth. When everyone arrived here, the people here were still living in a drunken dream. No one realized the impending crisis, and Jiujiu also reminded everyone not to remind these people. First of all, even if you remind them, no one will necessarily believe it, and it is even more difficult to explain the source of the news. After all, the virus crisis that broke out in Raccoon City has long been smoothed by Umbrella through various channels. Second, it is also to ensure that Dr. Ashford can develop an antidote as soon as possible, so that Umbrella will not find everyone before then. Even so, Jiujiu still let everyone rest for 3 days in Las Vegas to relax their bodies and minds. 3 days later, everyone drove out of the city again and entered the no man's land. When everyone found this base, everyone was shocked by the power of Umbrella. If it weren't for King Ada telling everyone that this is a base, no one would believe that this is an underground base. Because this place is too inconspicuous. It is a small place surrounded by barbed wire. There are no extra houses inside. There is only a lonely wooden house standing there. In such an environment, who would think this is an underground base? According to the information intercepted by Red Queen through satellites, Umbrella has already started to release viruses worldwide, and Jiujiu knows that the time to capture the base has come. Gathering everyone, Jiujiu began to arrange the battle plan. In fact, this plan is very simple. Jiujiu, Alice, and King Ada are the main attacking personnel, and 10 mechanical dogs and 3 people will attack the base together. Other personnel, 3 people will stay to protect Ashford, Angela, and LJ, and the rest will follow up to occupy the base. This plan was unanimously recognized by everyone after Jiujiu summoned 10 mechanical dogs. Just kidding, the combat power of mechanical dogs is obvious to all. With these 10 mechanical dogs, everyone even felt that if they were allowed to attack, they would be able to easily occupy a US military base with a full complement of 1,000 people. This was also the wolf pack that Jiujiu had repaired and created during his 3 days in Las Vegas. The reason why there was no large-scale production was, of course, the material constraints and Jiujiu's own energy limited the number of soldiers. However, Jiujiu was not in a hurry. After all, a total of 10 mechanical dogs did meet Jiujiu's current needs. The action began, with 10 mechanical dogs in front and Jiujiu and his 3 companions behind. 10 minutes after the 3 set off, Carlos, Jill and others also followed. The guards defending around the wooden house were quietly solved by the mechanical dogs before they discovered Jiujiu and his 3 companions. After passing through the barbed wire and entering the wooden house, Jiujiu easily found the mechanism to open the elevator. The 3 people and 10 mechanical dogs stood on it. As the elevator descended, the 3 people were ready to fight at any time. Because Red Queen had controlled all the computers and cameras in the base in advance, the 3 people were not discovered by the people here until they landed underground. This base is not big, nor is it small. Its specifications are not as big as the hive in Raccoon City. But it has all the necessary equipment, and even the stored food is enough for Jiujiu and his people to eat for 3 to 5 years. Along the way, the 3 people and 10 mechanical dogs attacked the core position of the base, which is the control center area here, without encountering any obstacles. For these umbrella security personnel, Jiujiu did not mean to hold back at all, and killed them with one word. Ada Wong was even more so, she would not hold back against these people. Only Alice still had a little compassion, but she was soon led astray by Jiujiu and Ada Wong, and her killing became more and more clean and neat. It didn't take the 3 of them much time to clean up the dozens of umbrella security personnel scattered in the base. Of course, the most important thing was that the 10 mechanical dogs killed the most people. The rest were some researchers in the test area. Jiujiu did not kill these people, and even stopped Ada Wong from killing people in anger when he saw them doing experiments on living bodies. After all, if Ashford relied on himself alone, how long it would take to develop an antidote was really an unknown. With the help of these people, Jiujiu believed that the antidote could be developed in no more than a year. Not long after, Carlos and Jill and other second batches also went down to the base, and Jiujiu also gave them the task of controlling these researchers. Then, Ashford and others went down to the base through the walkie-talkie. Afterwards, Jiujiu arranged everyone's guarding and monitoring work, and of course the mechanical dog was responsible for the top. The work of cleaning up the corpses was easy to solve. After all, there was a crematorium here, and it was easy to cremate these corpses. As for the bloodstains on the ground, it took everyone's efforts, and it took an afternoon to clean them up. The base was successfully occupied, and Ashford immediately invested in research experiments. Jiujiu and his team could finally live quietly in the base for a while. $131 Weskier and #039, big attack. Just a few days of peace, the global virus disaster broke out completely. Because it was artificially released, the speed of virus spread can be said to be extremely terrifying. In just 1 week, some small countries were slaughtered by zombies. Even those large countries, without any defense, were attacked by zombies and were in a mess. Large areas of land were occupied by zombies. The total number of humans decreased by 50% in less than a month. In the underground base in Las Vegas, Jiujiu and Alice and several other leaders stood in front of the large display screen. Through the pictures taken by Red Queen with satellites, zombies attacked all over the world. Countless people were knocked down and bitten by zombies, and stood up again after only a shell was left, joining the zombie army. Seeing such a scene, everyone fell silent. They were all grateful that they met Jiujiu in Raccoon City. Not only did they rescue them from Raccoon City, but they also occupied a base of Umbrella, so that everyone had a safe place to live, not surrounded by zombies, and did not have to face the danger of being surrounded by zombies at any time. I am even more grateful to Jiujiu and Dr. Ashford, especially Jiujiu, who predicted this outcome before the crisis broke out on a large scale and invested in the development of the antidote so early. At this moment, whether it was Ada Wong, who was once in a high position, or Alice, who was superhuman, or Carlos and others who escaped from Raccoon City with Jiujiu, they were all very convinced of Jiujiu. Straight face, straight face. It can be said that now, as long as Jiujiu gives an order, everyone will execute it without hesitation. Of course, if Jiujiu asked them to die deliberately, they would still have to be reserved. What Jiujiu didn't know was that because of the disappearance of Ada Wong and others, several senior executives of Umbrella were very concerned about this matter. Or maybe Ada Wong and his people disappeared too completely. After the explosion of the black egg in Raccoon City, they have not been seen since then. This is very abnormal. Combined with Kane's death in Raccoon City, it can be concluded from the remaining information that all this is related to a mysterious person. Whether this is true or false, the top executives of the Umbrella, led by Isaac, will not take it lightly. Don't think that the Red Queen controls the satellite monitoring, and the Umbrella really can't find Jiujiu and others. In fact, just after Ada Wong disappeared, they began to track the whereabouts of Jiujiu and others. Don't forget that Jiujiu and others also appeared in Las Vegas and stayed for 3 days. With the huge network strength of the Umbrella, based on this clue, Isaac quickly locked the target in the Las Vegas area. Later, after trying to contact the Las Vegas base to no avail, Isaac keenly realized that Jiujiu and others may have occupied this base before the virus broke out. So, will Isaac, who came to this conclusion, not react? The answer is of course, no. Regardless of whether his guess was accurate or not, the fact that the Las Vegas base lost contact was a fact, and he would send people to investigate. So, Isaac's top thug, Weskier, was sent out by Isaac. This time, the operation was very powerful, with an armed team of 250 people and at least 50 helicopters. Not to mention, there were advanced weapons and equipment, powerful airborne missiles, and handheld rocket launchers. When Weskier brought a large force to the sky over Las Vegas, there was no living person here, and there were endless zombies wandering in the city. So many helicopters made a huge sound, which immediately attracted the attention of all zombies, and they all roared and chased after the helicopters. However, the speed of the zombies without mutations was very touching. After chasing out of Las Vegas, these zombies lost the trace of the helicopters, and even the sound disappeared. So, a large number of zombies stopped where they were, but there were still many zombies moving towards the base. According to the movement trajectory of the zombies, there will always be a day when they wander to the base. It must be said that using the mechanical dog as a sentinel was Jiujiu's wisest decision. When Weskier's large force landed near the base, they were discovered by the patrolling mechanical dog, and Jiujiu learned the news. At the same time, Jiujiu also received a long-lost system task. Congratulations to the host for triggering Hidden Task 11. Successfully defeat the attack of Umbrella, kill at least half of the Umbrella security personnel, 0/125, and reward 12,500 experience. Jiujiu did not dare to neglect it, and immediately found Alice, Ada Wong, Carlos and Commander Old John. After several people came to the meeting room, Jiujiu said directly, "We were still discovered by the Umbrella people, and they sent a large force. Next, I plan to set the battlefield outside the base, so." After a pause, Jiujiu glanced at everyone with a sharp look, and then said, "I don't plan to let everyone participate in this battle. After all, people still need to guard the inside of the base. Then, Alice and I can go out. You all stay in the base." Speaking of this, Jiujiu raised his hand to stop Ada Wong and Carlos who wanted to join the battle, and said seriously, "Ada Wong, you are not suitable to appear in the sight of the Umbrella personnel now, do you understand what I mean?" Hearing this, Ada Wong was stunned, but immediately understood what Jiujiu meant. She knew that she was indeed not suitable to appear in front of the Umbrella now, otherwise the consequences would be that Isaac would destroy this place at all costs. It's even easier to say about Carlos. Compared to Old John, Carlos obviously has much better defensive experience than Old John. Without further ado, both Jiujiu and Alice took action. In fact, Jiujiu could go out alone and kill everyone under the Umbrella. However, since Alice is the protagonist of this world, it's always not good to not let others go, right? What's more, having Alice as a big light bulb outside can also help Jiujiu attract a lot of attention, right? The two took the elevator up to the outside of the base. Jiujiu unceremoniously released all 10 mechanical dogs in the space. Including the 2 mechanical dogs patrolling outside, the number of mechanical dogs currently owned by Jiujiu has reached 12. Don't underestimate the 2 extra mechanical dogs. Jiujiu can completely divide the mechanical dogs into 6 groups. Each group of 2 can fully exert the attack and killing effect of the mechanical dogs, and can also cover each other. Attack and retreat. Jiujiu also believed that with these 12 mechanical dogs, the people under the Umbrella would suffer a big loss during the attack. $132 first wave of sneak attack. This was not over yet. A total of 20 mechanical flies were also released by Jiujiu, and they were uniformly controlled by the Red Queen to conduct all-round surveillance within a 5-kilometer radius around the base. In other words, no matter where the people under the Umbrella attack from, Jiujiu will know their plans in advance. This is the mechanical creature that Jiujiu created after staying at the base for so long and going out to collect materials from time to time after the virus outbreak. Taiwan Novel Network. Not only did it expand his own strength, it also maximized this counterattack. In a mountainous area 2 kilometers away from the base, Weskier was wearing a pair of huge sunglasses and a decent black suit, sitting elegantly on a luxurious chair. He looked with satisfaction at the 250 men in black combat uniforms standing neatly in front of him. Weskier stopped doing anything to mobilize in front of the station and waved his hand and said, "Start the attack." As soon as the sound fell, the 250 men stood at attention, dispersed without saying a word, held their rifles, and walked quickly towards the base. The terrain here is much more complicated than that at the base. After all, it is a mountainous environment. Although the mountains here are bare and devoid of plants, they are very suitable for mechanical dogs to carry out assault operations here. Jiujiu asked Alice to act alone, and after telling her to be careful, he gave the order to attack the Red Queen and Wolf Warriors 1 and 2 in his mind. 12 mechanical dogs occupied 6 hills respectively, faintly surrounding the 250 people. The next moment, 12 mechanical dogs jumped up the hill at the same time, opened their mouths and fired 3 rapid bursts, instantly eliminating 30 security personnel. The sudden outbreak of fighting immediately startled these security personnel, but after all, these people were elite personnel who had received strict training. They quickly reacted and either lay down on the ground or half-crouched on the ground, picked up their guns and started shooting at the 12 mechanical dogs. The 12 mechanical dogs would not stand still and be attacked by concentrated fire. They were divided into 6 groups and dispersed in all directions. In just an instant, they surrounded these security personnel and shot them from a distance. Seeing that all these people's attention was attracted by the mechanical dog, Jiujiu also poked his head out from the side of a hill, shook his hands and threw 2 mechanical traps into the crowd. The distance of more than 100 meters is really not a problem for Jiujiu, whose strength now exceeds 10. The trap drew an arc in the air and fell into the unaware crowd. When the trap hit the ground, it bounced into the air with a clang, swish sound, and then large swaths of arrows and steel balls were shot out in all directions. Screams of ah, 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 accompanied by fierce gunshots resounded in this mountainous area. The gunshots coming from the front immediately caught Weskier's attention. His eyes with sunglasses couldn't help but look in the direction of the gunshots, and asked the guard beside him doubtfully, "What's going on?" The subordinate was putting one hand on the headset on his ear, listening to the report of the people at the front. Hearing the report, his face was very ugly. "Sir, our frontline troops were attacked by unknown creatures, and the frontline troops are fighting these creatures." Hearing this, Weskier couldn't help but be startled. His subconscious understanding of the so-called unknown creatures. In addition to the enhanced zombies, lickers, and chasers that their umbrella has developed. The only creatures that can be called unidentified creatures are the zombie killers that are being studied, the Makini zombies, and the skinless ones. What other creatures can be called unidentified creatures? The strangest thing is, why do these unknown creatures attack our frontline troops? This made him confused. After all, there were not many lickers, and they were all locked up in the company. The number of big butchers is even rarer, and they are also the biggest killer weapons of the umbrella, and they will not be released. So, logically speaking, it is impossible for these creatures to appear here. Before he could figure it out, his subordinates continued. "Sir, there is definite news coming from the front. We are attacked by 12 giant dog-shaped mechanical creatures. And the person commanding them is probably a Chinese teenager." Hearing this, Weskier had an incredible look on his face, as if talking to himself or asking his subordinates. What? A giant dog-shaped mechanical creature, and the commander is a Chinese boy? Is this a joke? No wonder Weskier would ask such a question. After all, even the Umbrella Company, which has the highest technology in the world, has not created such a mechanical creature. The most powerful machines in the company are just robots that have no intelligence and can only fight according to the program. You know, Weskier could tell from the words of his men that these mechanical creatures were very difficult to deal with and had very strong fighting power. They are invulnerable and move quickly and agilely. Not only are they terrifying in close combat, they can also carry out long-range attacks. The weapons in the hands of those in the front, whether rifles or machine guns, cannot hurt them at all. What was most difficult for him to understand was that the person commanding these mechanical creatures was a Chinese teenager. In his impression, Chinese people, whether it is the Chinese in the big Eastern countries or the Chinese who immigrated to the United States, they are synonymous with cowardice. It is undeniable that these Chinese Americans in the United States have made indelible contributions to the development of the United States, but when did these Chinese people master such advanced technology? They could fight against a large army of 250 people with only 12 mechanical creatures. Thinking of this, Weskier couldn't help but become very interested in Jiujiu and the 12 mechanical creatures. So, Weskier planned to verify the combat limit of these mechanical creatures, and calmly gave orders to his subordinates. Karen, let all our helicopters participate in the battle. After speaking, Weskier showed a confident smile at the corner of his mouth, and said to himself, I want to see if those mechanical creatures can still cope with the intensive bombing of helicopters. The subordinates were stunned when they heard this, and seemed to not understand why the superiors made such a move of using a cannon to hit a mosquito. Obviously, he knew that no matter how powerful and invulnerable those mechanical creatures were, they could not be opponents of missile bombing. Was it necessary to dispatch all the helicopters? However, he dared not disobey Weskier's order, and immediately agreed, pressed the headset switch on his ear and said, All helicopters enter the battlefield and support the frontline personnel. The next moment, the deafening whoosh sound of helicopters starting up rang out on the open ground. Following that, 50 helicopters rose into the air, and the huge fleet blocked a large area of the sky above their heads. $133 Mechanical flies make new contributions. Of course, Jiujiu saw the helicopter take off from a distance. Google search reading. To be honest, Jiujiu is not completely sure about dealing with these big guys flying in the sky. He regretted why he attacked the ground forces of the Umbrella first, instead of trying to solve the helicopter group parked on the ground. In fact, it is not Jiujiu's fault that he did not think carefully, and even the Red Queen did not consider these. Google search TWKAN. You know, if Jiujiu ignores the 250-man ground force and lets them rush into the underground base, Jiujiu may be fine, but Ada Wong and others in the base may not all survive. There is no time to think so much. Jiujiu immediately gave orders to the Red Queen in his mind, commanding all the mechanical dogs to retreat and hide in the mountains. Use the terrain here to disperse the attack on the ground forces of the Umbrella, and the important thing is not to be locked by the helicopter attack. After this raid, the 250-man ground force has solved at least 80 people, and there is still Alice outside to help him, right? Jiujiu believed that for the safety of the people in the base, Alice would do everything she could to prevent the ground troops from entering the base. Jiujiu and the mechanical dog hiding in the mountains made the helicopters flying in the air lose their tracking targets in a short period of time. Although these helicopters are equipped with advanced electronic equipment, it is not so easy to find targets in the mountains without a purpose. Hiding in a small cave, Jiujiu was communicating with Red Queen. Red Queen, do you think we can destroy helicopters like this? Sir, the best way to deal with them is of course surface-to-air missiles. Nonsense, if I had these, would I still ask you? Ah, sir. Since we don't have that kind of weapon, the best way is to let them lower their flying altitude. In this way, our mechanical dog troops will have the opportunity to shoot at close range, and there is a 50% chance that they can penetrate their fuel tanks, causing the helicopters to lose power due to lack of fuel. Well, this is a solution, but after all, there are too many helicopters on the other side. Once the mechanical dogs are exposed, I don't believe they can remain intact in the bombing of missiles. Then I have no choice, sir. Hearing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but raise his hand to rub his swollen head, but he continued to think about how to deal with these helicopters without being discouraged. Thinking about it, Jiujiu suddenly remembered the mechanical flies that he didn't care about much. To be honest, since he had Red Queen, he really didn't care about these little things. But it was these little things that allowed him to solve Kane's last almost unsolvable threat in Raccoon City. So, can they also produce unexpected effects this time? Thinking of this, Jiujiu had some ideas in his mind, and immediately continued to communicate with Red Queen. Red Queen, do you have any information about helicopter precision parts being damaged and losing control and crashing? For example, mechanical flies. Red Queen. After a long silence, the excited voice of Red Queen sounded in Jiujiu's mind. Sir, you are such a genius. I understand what you mean. In fact, Red Queen really understood what Jiujiu meant. After all, with the experience in Raccoon City last time, Red Queen's system already had an unusual way to use the mechanical fly. It was just limited by the limitations of the intelligent brain, and it didn't have as big a brain hole as Jiujiu. When reminded by Jiujiu, it immediately understood Jiujiu's idea. It was just a simple calculation simulation, and it found a detailed attack method. After saying that, before Jiujiu could speak, Red Queen continued to say excitedly. Sir, at the speed at which the helicopter is hovering over us now, I can completely control the mechanical fly to enter the helicopter. As long as it enters the helicopter's engine smoothly, a small self-explosion can detonate the entire helicopter. Hearing this, Jiujiu also became excited, and deeply understood why the protagonists in the novels can always use inconspicuous little things to turn the situation around. It is true that there are no completely useless tools, only people who don't know how to use them. Then, since I can develop and utilize the useless mechanical fly to this extent, am I also a brain-opening expert? Red Queen ignored Jiujiu's narcissism and had already controlled a mechanical fly to move. It must be said that the mechanical fly created by the system is indeed a black technology product. In theory, the wind force generated by the high-speed rotation of the propeller of a flying helicopter is not something small like a fly can approach. But I didn't expect that the mechanical fly flying at high speed could fly into the wind force range of the rotating propeller under the control of Red Queen. Once the mechanical fly enters the helicopter, it is even easier to enter the engine. For those metal parts, the mechanical fly may not be able to do anything with them, but those rubber parts have no problem under the metal needles in the mouth of the mechanical fly. And the small size of the mechanical fly is the innate condition for the mechanical fly to easily enter the engine. It was only 10 minutes later that Jiujiu, who was hiding in the cave, heard a deafening explosion in the sky. Jiujiu didn't need to go out to see it, because Red Queen had automatically transmitted these images to his mind through the satellite in the sky. In the picture, a helicopter that looked very majestic was hovering, and suddenly exploded into a burning fireball, and the wreckage of the helicopter body fell from the sky. Seeing this scene, Jiujiu excitedly waved his fist and shouted, "Yes!" Then, after an experiment was successful, Red Queen controlled the remaining mechanical flies and began to attack the remaining helicopters. On the other side, Weskier saw a helicopter suddenly explode in the air through a high-power telescope, and his eyes behind the sunglasses were full of disbelief and confusion. Under his attention. No attack methods were seen on the ground or in the air. So, how did the helicopter explode? This question was destined to be unpredictable for Weskier. Because the helicopter's engine exploded, and the explosion was so powerful. When the explosion occurred, the crew did not have time to send back any useful information. So, how could Weskier, who was on the ground, know the cause of the explosion? Further away, the remaining security personnel had passed the cave where Jiujiu was hiding, but were sniped by Alice. $134 Weskier is in a dilemma even though Alice doesn't have as many tricks as Jiujiu. In terms of combat effectiveness, Alice, who has been transformed by the virus, is still very awesome. It was also because of Alice's efforts that the ground offensive troops were held back again, but Weskier no longer had the intention to care about the ground troops. Because, just at this moment, 3 more helicopters exploded inexplicably in the sky. To be honest, the loss of a few helicopters is nothing to the umbrella company. You must know that protective umbrellas now occupy 50% of the world's resources. It only takes a while to build some helicopters. Search TWKAN on Google. Even for those crew members, it is no pity to die. They are just clones. No matter how many people die, they can be recultivated and bred. However, this kind of unknown loss is Weskier's biggest headache. Before he could figure out why the helicopter exploded or what method the enemy used to blow up the helicopter, Weskier really had no confidence in winning the battle. Just for a while, one after another helicopters exploded in the air, scaring the remaining crew members from hovering in the sky anymore. Many helicopters turned around in the air and landed on the ground. This scene made Weskier very angry. He was not angry with these crew members, and it was even worse if he was not angry. After all, although these people are just security guards, it is not an exaggeration to say that they are actually the army. To withdraw from the battlefield without receiving orders is not something that any commander can turn a blind eye to. For these crew members, they may not be afraid of death in serious combat. But how could they not be afraid of such an unknown death, and how could they not escape? Seeing the helicopter land back to the ground, Jiujiu breathed a sigh of relief. After all, because he didn't care much about the role of the mechanical flies, Jiujiu only had 20 of them, and he just blew up 19 of them. If these helicopters did not retreat, he would have no choice but to let the mechanical dog risk attacking these helicopters. Fortunately, all the remaining helicopters landed, and the mechanical dogs were prevented from dying. Without any hesitation, Jiujiu immediately got out of the cave and chased the ground troops who were fighting Alice. Jiujiu was very fast, and he caught up to the battlefield in just a few minutes. Seeing Alice rushing left and right in the mountainous area, shooting from time to time, and holding back the attack of more than 100 people by one person, Jiujiu admired her very much. There was nothing to hesitate. Jiujiu immediately asked the Red Queen to control 10 wolves and 2 wolves to attack the security personnel from behind. The sudden entry of the 12 mechanical dogs immediately put the security personnel, who had long been annoyed by Alice, into an unfavorable situation of being attacked from both front and back. There is no way, both the mechanical dog and Alice are too cruel. In addition, Jiujiu showed up from behind to throw a trap or shoot a few crossbow arrows from time to time, which made it even worse. The 2 men and 12 dogs were like seducers coming to hell, killing more than 100 Umbrella security personnel without the slightest ability to fight back. In the past, weapons that could be effective against thousands of zombies had no effect at all this time. There was no way, Alice's movements were too fast, and the bullets of these elite security personnel could only chase behind Alice, but could not hit her at all. Not to mention the mechanical dog. Not to mention that the mechanical dog is faster than Alice. Even if it can occasionally hit the mechanical dog's body, it cannot break the defense of the mechanical dog's all-metal body. Even if the rocket launcher is set up, it cannot hit the flexible body of the mechanical dog. It will either explode in the open space, or it will be killed by the energy bullet fired by the mechanical dog first. But what they hated the most was the old YB Jiujiu. When you are ready to be on guard against him, Jiujiu hides so that they cannot find the target of their attack. But being on guard against Jiujiu all the time is not the answer. Don't forget, there are still Alice and 12 mechanical dogs here. If you don't keep an eye on them all the time, you won't be killed by them. All right. Once the target is changed to guard against Alice and the mechanical dog, Jiujiu will appear, give you a mechanical trap and shoot a few crossbow arrows, harvesting a few or dozens of lives, which makes them very helpless. Seeing the constant deaths of his men, Mark, the deputy captain who led the team, could no longer remain calm and immediately connected to Karen's communication channel. Sir, the other party is really powerful. We are trapped in the mountains by them. Please send support or allow us to abandon the mission and break out. Hearing this, Karen glanced at Weskier, who was sitting in the chair with a ferocious expression, with an ugly expression. At this time, Weskier was very annoyed. He originally thought that this was an extremely simple raid and annihilation battle. Who knew that it would be his side that was attacked and annihilated? This is nothing, but what makes him particularly uncomfortable is that his opponents only have 2 people and 12 mechanical creatures. This is outrageous, isn't it? Speaking of which, he is also Isaac's most powerful thug. He was involved in many of Isaac's shady conspiracies in the past. Of course, Weskier also has his own ambitions. The reason why he works so hard for Isaac is just to use Isaac as a springboard. Isaac gave him this task. Not only was Isaac trusting him, but it was also an opportunity for him to show off his abilities. It's a pity that Jiujiu gave him a blow in the head just after he came here. Not only could they not enter the base, they were defeated by their opponents even outside the base. This result made Weskier very angry, but there was nothing he could do about it. There is no other way. If you don't retreat, all these people will be here, and you may even die here. If you retreat, how will you explain to Isaac when you return? What do those high-level executives think of themselves? When Weskier was in a dilemma, the Bluetooth headset on his left ear suddenly rang. Hearing the ringtone, Weskier was stunned and immediately realized, knowing who else besides Isaac could contact him at this time. Taking a deep breath, Weskier reached out and pressed the answer switch. Isaac's voice suddenly came from the earphones, saying coldly and without any emotion. Weskier. You disappointed me and showed me what it means to be defeated and incompetent. However, this is not your fault, because one of your opponents is the company's most successful experiment in Raccoon City, the goddess of revenge Alice. As for the other Chinese boy, although we can't find any information about him, he is also a powerful person who is not weaker than Alice. Hearing this, Weskier couldn't help but said in surprise. Sir. Are you telling the truth? It's really hard to believe that Alice is in his opponent's hands, so it's no wonder. But, gentlemen, even the company couldn't find the information about the Chinese boy. How is it possible? $135 counterattack Enzas, Weskier. No matter from which channel, the origin of this boy cannot be found. He is very mysterious. Google search reading. Google search TWKAN. Haha. But, this is also good. They have such strength, which is just right for providing detailed experimental data for our new products, isn't it? Okay, Weskier, you can come back. Hearing this, although Weskier was very unwilling in his heart, he was inexplicably relieved and said respectfully, "Yes, sir." After ending the call, Weskier stood up expressionlessly and said to Karen, who was uneasy on the side, "Notify them that they can retreat." After speaking, Weskier turned and walked towards his car. As he walked, Weskier was thinking about what Isaac meant. The experimental data Isaac said would not be. Thinking of this, Weskier couldn't help but take a deep breath. He thought of what the experimental data was. What else could it be? It can't be virus experiment data. After all, after a large-scale release of the virus, those who can withstand the virus attack have become resistant to the virus. Even if the virus is released again, the desired experimental data cannot be obtained. Then, the only possibility is those real monsters that have been researched or even just researched. Thinking of this, Weskier's mind emerged with the experimental scenes he had seen in the past. Those enhanced zombies that have regained wisdom, not only run faster, but can even open doors, climb and cooperate. There are also those big butchers who seem to have no weaknesses, are 3 meters tall, with a sack on their heads and a huge execution axe in their hands. There are even monsters that are catalyzed by extremely perverted means, like a huge skinless mountain. Thinking that Isaac is likely to release these monsters here, Weskier can't help but feel sad for the people in the base. He doesn't believe that Alice and the mysterious Chinese boy can withstand the attacks of these monsters. You know, any of the monsters mentioned above cannot be dealt with by a mere human army. Weskier's car took off, leaving behind his subordinate Karen and the ground attack force without hesitation. As for whether these people can return to the company alive, Weskier doesn't care at all. Looking at Weskier, who has already flown away, Karen's face is terribly gloomy, but he really doesn't dare to leave like this. After all, he is just a thug of Weskier, and his reliance is the ground troops still fighting in front. If they are gone. For Umbrella, he is just a worthless waste. Jiujiu naturally knew about Weskier's departure through Red Queen. At the same time, he also got a piece of news that did not surprise Jiujiu. Umbrella is also monitoring the battle here through satellites. In fact, this is true. Although Red Queen controls a satellite to monitor here, Umbrella has more satellites. Red Queen can monitor here, and Umbrella can naturally monitor here. When the battle began, Isaac watched the battle between Jiujiu and Alice through satellites. Although Jiujiu surprised Isaac, he was most interested in Alice. After all, Alice was artificially created by them, and her combat power was first revealed in this battle. And where is Alice's combat limit, which is also the issue that Isaac cares about most. As for Jiujiu's mechanical creatures, although Isaac is also jealous, he doesn't take it very seriously. This is also the reason why Isaac asked Weskier to come back first and then sent the company's experimental products to attack the base. He is also the only person in Umbrella who recognizes personal strength. Any mechanical external object, no matter how powerful it is, has fatal loopholes, but people don't. This is also why Jiujiu doesn't know Isaac's thoughts, otherwise Jiujiu will definitely tell him. Your knowledge is so accurate. You shouldn't be born here, you should be born in the fantasy world of cultivation. The remaining Umbrella security personnel in the mountains, under the combined efforts of Jiujiu, 12 mechanical dogs and Alice, more than 100 people died and only more than 30 people were left. Seeing only 30 people left, Mark, the leader, could no longer bear such a great sacrifice and immediately issued an order to break out of the encirclement. Jiujiu received a prompt from the system that the task was completed when the number of kills was completed. Congratulations to the host for completing Hidden Task 11. Successfully defeated the attack of the Umbrella, killed at least half of the Umbrella security personnel, 216/125, and rewarded 12,500 experience. Tips: the host's level has been upgraded, and the current level is 18, with 5 more strength and 5 more physical strength, 1 more intelligence, spirit, and agility, which have been automatically assigned to the attribute panel. For details, please check the host yourself. Seeing that the task has been completed, Jiujiu does not intend to kill them all. After all, these people are just tools of the umbrella. Even there is a possibility that they are all clones. Killing them is equivalent to killing a bunch of cellular carbohydrates. Just thinking about it makes me feel uncomfortable. Mark was also panicking at this time. He was surrounded and wanted to rush out from the hands of 12 terrifying and unkillable mechanical creatures. He didn't know how many people would die. Unexpectedly, just when he was about to give the order to rush out, the killer-like mechanical creatures just now stopped attacking without warning and made way for a path. Although Mark was confused, he still impatiently escaped with the remaining people in embarrassment. Let the Red Queen monitor these people and escape, and Jiujiu also took Alice back to the base. As soon as they returned to the base, Carlos and others were summoned to the conference room by Jiujiu to discuss how to prevent possible attacks by Umbrella in the future. After today's battle, although the protective umbrella suffered a loss, there is no guarantee that they will not do it again, or even 3 or 4 times. Let's talk about it. How are we going to deal with the next umbrella attack? Jiujiu glanced at everyone present and said. Everyone looked at each other. King Ada, as the person who knew Umbrella's style best, was the first to say. The protective umbrella has been high for many years, and it will definitely not let up. The next attack will not wait long, and we must be ready to fight at any time. Hearing this, everyone fell silent, but no one was afraid to avoid it. Although everyone did not escape, there was no effective way to deal with it. Jiujiu coughed and said. Ahem, actually, everyone doesn't have to be so afraid of Umbrella's revenge. After finishing his words, seeing that everyone's attention was attracted by his words, Jiujiu continued. It's no longer a world ruled by humans. Don't forget those zombies. Even if they want to attack us, they can't send too many people, right? $136 Umbrella and hashtag 039's second attack. Hearing this, everyone reacted, and said in their hearts. Yes. Now is not a peaceful time, there are zombies everywhere. If you want to send people to attack here, you can only send planes. Google search reading. But no matter how many planes there are, how many people can they take? Just like today, 50 helicopters can only send more than 200 people. More than 200 people, with Yi and his mechanical dog, what is there to be afraid of? Thinking of this, everyone's confidence increased greatly, and they all looked at Jiujiu eagerly. Seeing that everyone's morale was rising, Jiujiu's purpose of this meeting was achieved, so he asked the question he was most concerned about. Ida Wong, you are directly responsible for Dr. Ashford and others. It has been a month. How is the progress of the antidote research? Hearing this, Ida Wong replied. Yi, the research progress is very slow and not very ideal. What they need is time, you know. Hearing this, Jiujiu knew what Ida Wong meant, but he did not blame Ashford and others for not trying their best. After all, in the movie, even Umbrella's powerful research capabilities took several years to develop, didn't it? The reason why I care about Ashford's research progress is that I hope to complete that world mission before I go back. After all, the reward for this mission is still good, a mechanical drone. What kind of growth can the new mechanical creation bring to my strength? Jiujiu is looking forward to it. Next, Jiujiu discussed with everyone about the arrangements for the next defense work. After the meeting, Jiujiu handed over the affairs of the base to Ada Wong and others, and he began to collect materials to create more mechanical creatures. Speaking of this, I have to say that Umbrella and Weskier are good tools. Although 19 helicopters were blown up in the battle, the remaining wreckage was also collected by Jiujiu, which saved Jiujiu a lot of time to go out to collect materials. After this battle, Jiujiu no longer dared to underestimate any system of mechanical creations. Time flies, and another month has passed in the blink of an eye. Let's look at Jiujiu's data at this time. Name, Jiujiu. Age, 16. Occupation, mechanical hunter. Level 18, 2800/18,000. Attributes. Strength, 11. Stamina, 11. Intelligence, 20. Spirit, 20. Agility, 20. Speed, 28 meters per second. Energy, 2000, 20 points/minute recovery speed. Occupational talents and skills. 1. Intermediate Combat Master. 2. Intermediate Mechanical Master. Pet, Mechanical Dog War Wolf *2. Mount, Chasing Wind. Special Space, Mechanical Manufacturing Space 1000 square meters, Traps *50, Spider Silk Sprayer, Mechanical Flies *50, Wolf Packs *20. Drawings, 0. Special Permissions, 0. Note, Time and Space Shuttle function has 0 times remaining. The Wolf Pack has reached 20, and there are also 50 mechanical flies, which makes Jiujiu more confident in dealing with the attacks of the Umbrella Company in the future. Umbrella did not give up the plan to attack Jiujiu and his team. Isaac was very cautious and crazy. He carefully studied the scene of Jiujiu commanding the mechanical dog to fight for a long time. After evaluating Jiujiu's combat effectiveness, Isaac used this month to expand the biochemical monster army he created. It was not until Isaac felt that the number of monsters could destroy Jiujiu and his team that he ordered the helicopter to take these biochemical monsters to the Las Vegas base. At this time, there were already many zombies gathered outside the base. These were also the zombies attracted by Weskier and others when they came last time. On this day, the sun was very hot, and Jiujiu sent 2 wolf packs out for patrol as usual. Suddenly, Jiujiu, who was resting at the base, received a message from Red Queen. Umbrella's attack is coming. Looking at the picture of dozens of helicopters flying far away in his mind, Jiujiu's expression became more and more solemn. Unlike the last time, this time, a huge container was hung under every 2 helicopters with a steel cable. Red Queen counted and found that there were a total of 20 containers. What kind of things need containers? The first thing that came to Jiujiu's mind was the new biochemical monsters developed by Umbrella. Yes, according to the nature of Umbrella Company, they like to put those biochemical monsters in containers. In the movie, the lickers are like this, and the enhanced zombies are also like this. Since the result was guessed, Jiujiu naturally did not dare to be careless, and immediately asked Red Queen to notify everyone to come to the meeting. After waiting for 10 minutes, several responsible persons arrived in the meeting room. After receiving the notice from Red Queen, Ada Wong and others guessed that something bad had happened. Sure enough, as soon as they entered the meeting room, they saw Jiujiu sitting at the top with a solemn look. Seeing Jiujiu so solemn, everyone who came sat down without saying a word. After everyone arrived, Jiujiu did not hide anything and said directly, "Everyone, a new round of attacks from Umbrella is coming." Speaking of this, Jiujiu asked Red Queen to project the surveillance footage, and pointed to the container hanging under the helicopter and said, "This is their secret weapon. I think King Ada can definitely think of something, right?" Hearing this, except for Ada Wong and Jiujiu, who looked solemn, everyone else was confused. Then, Ada Wong took a deep breath and said, "Yi, have you guessed it too?" After that, Ada Wong also pointed at the containers and continued, "So many. Are you sure? How to arrange it?" Hearing this, Jiujiu nodded and said, "This time, it is obviously not enough for me and Alice to go out alone. Ada Wong, I need you to select a few people who are proficient in long-range sniping to assist us in the rear." Hearing this, Ada Wong nodded solemnly, and mentally went over a few people he was familiar with who were good at using sniper rifles. At the same time, the group of helicopters also arrived outside the base. Dozens of helicopters hovered over the base, densely covering the sky above the base. Immediately afterwards, a series of snapping and clanging sounds rang out, and the steel cables hanging the containers were all broken, and 20 containers fell from midair. After a while, the container fell heavily to the ground with a boom, raising a large cloud of dust. Then, all 40 helicopters turned around and flew away without stopping. At this moment, the system prompt sounded in Jiujiu's mind. Trigger Hidden Mission 12. Successfully resist the second attack of the Umbrella, kill the enhanced zombies, 0/500, lickers, 0/20, chasers, 0/5, and big butchers, 0 out of 5, and reward 20,000 experience. After receiving this news, Jiujiu was quite surprised. It was not that Jiujiu was surprised by the biochemical monsters released by the Umbrella, but that he was surprised by the little experience after completing the mission. 137 Enhanced zombies, lickers, pursuers, and butchers all appear. Just think about it, when I first came to this world, I had 100 experience points for killing ordinary zombies, and 1000 experience points for killing lickers. This time, there are not only enhanced zombies, but also a large number of lickers, pursuers, and even big butchers. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. But there is only this little experience, why is this? Then Jiujiu had no time to think about why. Because all the containers that fell to the ground opened their doors. Seeing this, Jiujiu immediately took Alice and others who had been impatient for a long time and walked onto the elevator with full equipment. After arriving on the ground, Jiujiu released 22 mechanical dogs and 50 mechanical flies without stopping, and quickly rushed out of the base wire fence. The containers on the ground outside the base were all quiet at this time, obviously. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. The biochemical monsters inside are still under anesthesia. Put all 22 mechanical dogs in front of him to form a solid line of defense. Jiujiu also took out 10 mechanical traps from the space and placed them on the ground in front of the two of them, and taught Alice how to use the traps. This is also the method that Jiujiu can think of to maximize his own combat effectiveness. You know, among the people in the base, the one with the greatest strength is only Alice, who has been strengthened by the virus. Only she can throw the trap 50 meters away. In short, 2 people throwing traps is much better than 1 person, right? 500 strengthened zombies, if only relying on mechanical dogs and the 5 people behind Ada Wong to snipe, Jiujiu really has no confidence that he can kill them all before they rush into the base. Jiujiu had a deep understanding of the horror of enhanced zombies when watching movies. Although they seemed to have no fighting power under Alice's hands. They were still killed one by one in Alice's hands, but just from the fact that they could run at high speed and steadily, unlock and climb, and even surround and hunt, they were not comparable to ordinary zombies. While thinking about it, there came a low roar like a beast from the 20 containers, and then there was a clang-clang sound of heavy objects hitting. Jiujiu knew that all these monsters had woken up, and immediately prepared for battle, holding a trap in his left and right hands ready to throw it out at any time. Just as he was ready, the first to rush out of the container were 20 ferocious and ugly lickers. The lickers rushed out of the container and raised their small eyes to look around. Soon they saw Jiujiu and Alice standing in the front. As soon as they saw the living people, these lickers all raised their heads and roared, and a large amount of sticky saliva flowed out of the gaps between their fangs and their huge mouths. Then, 20 lickers rushed towards the 2 people. At a distance of 150 meters, Jiujiu shook his hand without hesitation and threw 2 traps in a row to the middle of the lickers. Then the traps were ejected into the air, shooting out countless arrows and steel balls. Unfortunately, because the lickers charged too fast, the traps only hit the exposed heads of the 2 lickers that lagged behind. A large number of arrows and steel balls shot into their heads, causing the 2 lickers to fall to the ground at once, and because of inertia, they slid forward for more than 10 meters before stopping. At this time, Isaac saw this scene through the satellite, and saw that Jiujiu easily killed 2 lickers, which surprised Isaac. Then, the 20 mechanical dogs guarding Jiujiu all moved, rushing towards the remaining 18 lickers, and opening their mouths to shoot white bullet-like things at these lickers. The lickers in front were very flexible, jumping left and right to dodge the bullets. The lickers behind wanted to dodge, but they were too late to dodge. However, they were able to swing their heads at the critical moment to avoid the bullets hitting their heads, and were shot in their strong bodies. Don't underestimate the power of these energy bullets. Although their bodies are strong enough to withstand the bullets, they cannot completely prevent the penetration of energy bullets. The energy bullets penetrated the lickers' bodies for at least 20 centimeters, and a large amount of sticky blood flowed out, causing the lickers to howl miserably in pain. The next moment, the mechanical dogs and lickers collided with each other, and a fierce fight immediately broke out. Of course, the lickers were crushed. After all, their claws and teeth can't hurt the mechanical dogs, at most they can leave scratches and tooth marks on their bodies. Although the bodies of the lickers are also very strong, under the control of the Red Queen, they can't beat the mechanical dogs that are more flexible than them. Especially the energy bullets fired from the mouth of the mechanical dogs at close range and the sharp tail stings on their tails are definitely the biggest killers. In just one encounter, at least 5 lickers died under the siege of the mechanical dogs. The battle was going on, and some heavy and chaotic footsteps came from other containers at this time. Hearing the sound, Jiujiu knew it was not good. He immediately shouted to Alice, who wanted to help. "Alice, be careful, there are monsters coming out again." After shouting, he pressed the headset and shouted, "King Ada, don't shoot yet. Wait until Alice and I attract their attention, then you can choose to shoot. Remember, don't expose yourself easily, protect yourself." After saying that, Jiujiu took out 2 traps from the space and held them in his hand. Sure enough, with the sound of hurried footsteps, a large group of enhanced zombies dressed in neat work clothes, with haggard faces and bloodstains on the corners of their mouths rushed out. As soon as they came out, they smelled the smell of Jiujiu and Alice in the air, and immediately rushed towards Jiujiu and Alice. There was nothing to hesitate. Jiujiu immediately shook his hand and threw 2 traps over, and kept taking out 2 more traps and throwing them over. Although these enhanced zombies have wisdom, they are just a little faster than ordinary people. How can they avoid the shooting of these traps like the lickers? Under the arrows and steel balls, the enhanced zombies rushing in front fell to the ground one after another, with arrows and steel balls stuck in their heads and bodies. Isaac, who saw this scene from the surveillance video, couldn't help but twitch his mouth slightly. He really didn't expect that the things Jiujiu threw out would be so powerful. You know, he had experimented before. 500 enhanced zombies, even if they attacked an army of 1,000 people, would only win in half an hour. When it came to Jiujiu, they were completely unable to play their role. They couldn't rush in front of the 2 people at all, and it looked like they were automatically sent to die. However, these zombies are indeed enhanced. The companions who died one after another in front of them let them know that there was a death zone ahead, and they all went around to both sides. $138 let them kill each other. Ida Wong and his 5 men, who were ready to support Jiujiu at any time, immediately locked their sights on the enhanced zombies that surrounded them from both sides, and shot at Jiujiu and Alice without hesitation. Google search reading. After the enhanced zombies, there were 5 pursuers holding Gatling guns. As soon as they walked out of the container and came to the edge of the battlefield, they picked up machine guns and locked Jiujiu and Alice. Without waiting for them to shoot, Jiujiu immediately told Alice to be careful and dodge, and he also rushed into the battlefield. Taiwan Novel Network. His plan was simple. As long as he rushed into the battlefield, it was hard to say whether the pursuers would shoot their companions. However, he was wrong. In the eyes of the pursuers, the so-called companions were only pursuers like them, and any other creatures were not their companions. Thanks to the chip control in their brains, otherwise, the pursuers would have been so fierce that they would have shot without any regard for their relatives. Isaac saw Jiujiu rushing into the battlefield and fighting with the lickers, but the lickers were almost killed, so he immediately gave the order to the men who controlled the pursuers to attack indiscriminately without hesitation. The next moment, all the material pursuers raised their guns and aimed at the battlefield. Jiujiu was so sensitive that he kept an eye on the 5 pursuers even when he was charging. Seeing them raise their guns and aim at him, he jumped in his heart and immediately asked Red Queen to control the wolf pack to avoid them. He commanded the 2 werewolves with his mind to rush out of the battlefield without hesitation and rush towards the 5 pursuers. On the other side, Alice kept throwing traps, cooperating with Ada Wong and others who were sniping from a distance to kill the enhanced zombies that were bypassing from both sides. Jiujiu's speed at this time was 28 meters per second. Although it had not reached the speed of sound, it was not something that the pursuers could lock on. The 5 pursuers had just started shooting, and the unique bang 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 sound of the 5 Gatling guns immediately resounded throughout the battlefield. The remaining lickers could not avoid so many dense bullets, and many were hit by bullets. Even though their bodies were strong, they could not withstand such powerful bullets, and many died immediately. Those who were not dead also had their limbs broken, and they lay on the ground howling. Before Jiujiu rushed to the 5 pursuers, 5 particularly tall figures walked out of the remaining containers with heavy footsteps. Hearing the footsteps, Jiujiu knew that it must be the big butcher who came out, and he said in his heart, "It's unlucky to have a roof leaking and it rains all night." He did not dare to stop at all, because the 20 wolves were still on the battlefield. Sure enough, the Red Queen kept saying in his mind, "Sir, wolf pack number 10 failed to dodge the bullets, and one of its front legs was broken. It can't fight for the time being." Hearing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but feel depressed, and also lamented the flaws of artificial intelligence. If this were replaced by the war wolf that could act independently, he wouldn't really worry about them. After all, it's the nature of animals to seek benefits and avoid harm, isn't it? The next moment, Jiujiu had already rushed to the side of the 5 pursuers, shook his hand and threw 2 traps to the middle of the 5 pursuers, watching the traps bounce into the air and shoot arrows and steel balls. The pursuers were also reckless, and they could actually control the Gatling gun with one hand and raise one hand to block their heads, and they didn't even dodge. Okay. Since you are so reckless, then I'll fulfill your wish. Thinking of this, Jiujiu simply threw the traps without stopping, and let the war wolf kill the enhanced zombies that rushed to his side. The Red Queen's prompts kept ringing in Jiujiu's ears, which wolf pack had its limbs broken and had to withdraw from the battle. Fortunately, their bodies were strong enough. Although the Gatling bullets were powerful, they could not break their bodies. However, they left countless deep holes on their bodies. They only needed to be repaired after the battle to recover. The pursuers were reckless, or Isaac was too confident, and ignored the power of the trap. The result was, the 5 pursuers were shot countless times in the head with arrows and steel balls. Although the pursuers had good defense and recovery ability, they could not withstand the continuous shooting of arrows and steel balls. Look, behind the monitor, the screen showing the pursuers' data kept flashing red light and issued a rapid alarm. The subordinates in charge of controlling the pursuers also immediately reported to Isaac, "Report to the commander, the pursuers' data shows that life recovery cannot keep up with the speed of body damage." Hearing this, Isaac's face did not show any anger or frustration, but was very excited. He became more and more interested in Jiujiu's methods. However, since the main purpose this time was to deal with Jiujiu and test the extreme combat power of the goddess of vengeance, he would naturally not let Jiujiu kill the 5 pursuers. Isaac immediately ordered the butcher's men to surround and kill Jiujiu. After the 5 butcher's men immediately crackled on the keyboard, the 5 butchers in the back of the battlefield all took heavy steps and rushed towards Jiujiu from slow to fast. It must be said that the deterrent power of these 5 butchers was strong enough. Jiujiu, who was 100 meters away from them, felt the tremor of the earth when they ran. To be honest, Jiujiu really looked down on these 5 stupid butchers. Although they are tall and strong, their reaction speed is worrying. Didn't you see that in the play? Not to mention Alice, even King Ada can dodge their attacks flexibly. Of course, their attack power should not be underestimated. Jiujiu dare not be hit by the power of the huge execution axe. Before the 5 butchers rushed over, Jiujiu kept throwing traps in his hand to increase the damage to the 5 pursuers. Just before the 5 butchers rushed over, 2 pursuers finally couldn't bear the damage and were shot to death by arrows and steel balls. The remaining 3 pursuers were not much better. Didn't you see that their originally strong bodies were already shaky? Isaac was a ruthless man. Seeing that 2 pursuers were dead and 3 were about to die, he immediately ordered the pursuers to give up resistance and kill Jiujiu with rockets. The next moment, the proud Jiujiu saw 3 pursuers who were about to die, put down their hands blocking their heads, threw away the Gatling guns that had not yet finished firing bullets, and took off the rocket launchers behind them in unison. Fuck. Jiujiu cursed loudly, and rushed out without hesitation, and his target was the 5 big butchers who rushed over. Don't think that Jiujiu has no plan to deal with these big guys. Since the pursuers and the big butchers are very powerful, how can Jiujiu be worthy of coming to the world of Resident Evil if he doesn't let them kill each other? Sure enough, when the pursuer picked up the rocket launcher and aimed at Jiujiu, Jiujiu had already rushed in front of the 5 big butchers. $139. What is it like to fight the butcher with Gatling? After such an operation, in Isaac's shocked eyes, the butcher in front raised his axe with both hands and chopped down at Jiujiu. Jiujiu rushed forward and quickly got under the crotch of the butcher. The next moment, the heavy axe missed and chopped into the ground, making a big hole in the ground. Before he could raise the axe again, 3 rockets with tail flames had already hit the butcher. 3 explosions sounded, and the butcher was immediately surrounded by flames and smoke. With a clang, the axe fell to the ground, and then a huge figure slowly fell to the ground. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network diamondsuit. At this time, Jiujiu had already moved away from the big butcher, rolled over to dodge the giant axes swung by the 3 big butchers behind him, and rushed to the front of the last big butcher. He leaned back and used inertia to slide behind the last big butcher, turned around suddenly, and jumped high. The bright knife light flashed in his hand, and the two dog-leg knives chopped fiercely at the head of the big butcher. With a puff, the dog-leg knife cut through the sack on the big butcher's head and chopped into the big butcher's head. Unfortunately, Jiujiu felt that the sharp blade only cut into a dozen centimeters and could not cut in any further. With a sigh of pity in his heart, Jiujiu kicked hard behind it with his legs, and used the force to do a backward flip to not only get away from the big butcher, but also avoid the big butcher's left hand grabbing from behind. After falling to the ground and rolling, Jiujiu stood up from the ground, feeling very depressed. You know, Jiujiu's current physical fitness is at the lowest 11 points, which means that he has 1,100 kilograms of strength, and 2,200 kilograms of strength when he explodes, but he can't cut into the big butcher's head. From this, it can be seen how abnormal the defense of this big butcher is. Before Jiujiu could figure out how to kill these big butchers, the other three big butchers had turned around and surrounded Jiujiu. After a short break, the three pursuers in the distance recovered quickly from the injuries on their bodies and heads, and took advantage of this time to continue loading rockets into the rocket launcher. After a series of rolls and leaps, he dodged the axes of the four butchers. Before he stood up, he felt his hair stand on end. Without hesitation, Jiujiu immediately jumped forward and flexibly got under the crotch of a butcher who was stepping down in front of him. Sure enough, before he stood up, 3 explosions sounded in succession from the butcher behind him. Well, another butcher was accidentally killed by the rockets of the 3 pursuers, which made Jiujiu secretly happy and made Isaac grit his teeth. Seeing that this was not a solution, Isaac immediately ordered his men to let the pursuers give up bombing Jiujiu and eliminate Jiujiu's mechanical creatures first. Unfortunately, when he reacted, it was too late. No pursuers were staring at the wolf pack. The remaining 8 wolves that were still intact had already pounced on him and attacked the 3 pursuers from behind. Don't underestimate the fighting power of the mechanical dogs. Whether it is the energy bullets in their mouths or their sharp claws and tail spikes, they are more powerful than the arrows and steel balls shot from the trap. 8 wolves pounced on the 3 pursuers and divided into 3 waves to kill 1 pursuer each. 2 pursuers were killed by 3 wolves respectively. 3 energy bullets were shot into their heads in no particular order, and 3 tail spikes flashing with cold light pierced into their heads, stirring them vigorously without any hesitation. One of them was unlucky and was pierced by the tail spike of a wolf pack in the chip in its head. The chip was destroyed and it immediately entered a dead state. Before its sleeping consciousness could control its body, it was completely destroyed by the 3 wolves and fell to the ground and died. At this time, the remaining 2 pursuers were no longer able to resist. They were surrounded and killed by the 4 wolves and were killed on the ground before they could hold on for a few minutes. At this point, the 20 lickers and 5 pursuers were completely wiped out, and only a few dozen reinforced zombies and 3 big butchers were defeated on the battlefield. At this point in the battle, Jiujiu's side completely gained the upper hand. I believe that as long as these 3 big butchers are dealt with, the battle will be victorious. As for the remaining 3 big butchers, with the weapons and equipment that Jiujiu currently has, it is obviously impossible to kill them. But don't forget that the weapons of the 5 pursuers are still in place. When the 5 pursuers died, Jiujiu rushed to the bodies of the pursuers. The remaining 8 wolf packs and 2 war wolves also went to support Alice under Jiujiu's order to surround and kill those reinforced zombies. Rushed to the body of the pursuer, picked up a rocket launcher, loaded the rocket without hesitation, carried it on his shoulder, aimed, and fired it in one go. With a hiss, the rocket with the tail flame shot at the charging big butcher, and with a boom it exploded on the first big butcher. Unfortunately, the power of a rocket, although it can seriously injure the butcher, cannot completely kill it. The smoke disappeared, and Jiujiu saw that although the butcher was in tatters, he was shaking tenaciously and did not fall to the ground. This is not a big deal. If one rocket can't kill it, at most another one can be used. If it's not enough, just use more. Unfortunately, there is not only one butcher here, but 2 others also rushed past it and rushed towards Jiujiu. Seeing this, Jiujiu cursed shit, threw away the rocket launcher in his hand, bent down and picked up a Gatling machine gun. As the motor of the Gatling machine gun sounded, the barrel turned, and 2 seconds later, the Gatling in Jiujiu's hand suddenly ejected dense rain of bullets pouring out on the 2 butchers. Not to mention, Gatling is worthy of being the most powerful machine gun in the world. Although it cannot kill the butcher immediately, the powerful kinetic energy of the bullets also makes it difficult for the 2 butchers who are charging to move. This is because they blocked the huge execution axe in their hands at the vital parts of their chests and heads, otherwise Jiujiu believed that they would not be able to withstand many bullets from the Gatling machine gun. Didn't you see that many bullets were shot at the execution axe in front of them? Isaac, who saw the scene through the monitor, finally couldn't keep calm, and his eyes were about to spit out flames of anger. He was as angry as he could be at this moment, because he no longer had a black egg in his hand. Otherwise, he would have fired a black egg without hesitation, turning Jiujiu and his companions, including the base, into ashes. In fact, the reason for his shame and anger was not Jiujiu's strong strength, but because he was embarrassed by his unreasonable command. Because not all lickers died at the hands of the opponent, most of the lickers were shot and killed by the pursuers with machine guns. And 2 of the big butchers were shot and killed by the pursuers' rockets. What is this? $140 being hugged by a goddess. It is no exaggeration to say that it is a cannibalism. Jiujiu was shooting happily with the Gatling gun. Alice, Ada Wong, and others who had time to watch saw the remaining 3 big butchers holding the execution axe, walking towards Jiujiu with difficulty, taking 1 step forward and 3 steps back. Unfortunately, no matter how hard they tried, they could not resist the powerful kinetic energy of the bullets fired by the Gatling gun. On the other side, the remaining enhanced zombies were also killed by the mechanical dogs. At this time, Alice, Ada Wong, and others all had black lines on their faces, watching Jiujiu playing with the Gatling gun and torturing the 3 giant-like monsters. Among them, only Ada Wong and one of his men knew what kind of monster it was. That was the Big Butcher. It can be said that it is the most powerful and invincible existence developed by Umbrella, but under Jiujiu, it is as vulnerable as a child. Seeing this ending, Isaac couldn't help but wail in his heart. Where did this pervert come from? Is he so powerful? At this moment, among the remaining 3 big butchers, the big butcher who had been hit by a rocket before finally couldn't resist and fell under the rain of bullets from the Gatling machine gun. Jiujiu's Gatling gun barrel finally couldn't withstand such high-intensity shooting. The barrel turned red and smoked, and the bullets were almost consumed. Jiujiu was not panicked at all. He put the machine gun into the space with a flick of his hand, picked up another Gatling gun from the ground, and immediately started shooting. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. The pressure on the 2 big butchers was greatly reduced. They were rushing towards Jiujiu for a few steps, and the next moment they were baptized by the Gatling gun rain again. In the end, the 2 big butchers died in the rain of machine gun bullets. So far, this battle finally ended with Jiujiu's victory. And the loss of Jiujiu's side seemed serious, but it was not. After all, among the 22 mechanical dogs, 14 were injured and damaged, but in Jiujiu's opinion, it was harmless. Repairing these mechanical dogs only took some energy and materials. At this time, the system prompt sounded. Congratulations to the host for completing Hidden Task 12. Successfully resisted the second attack of the Umbrella, killed the enhanced zombie, 500/500, the licker, 20/20ths, the pursuer, 5/5, and the butcher, 5/5, and rewarded 20,000 experience. Tip: the host's level has been upgraded, and the current level is 19. Strength and physical strength are increased by 5 each, intelligence, spirit, and agility are increased by 1 each, and have been automatically assigned to the attribute panel. Please check the details for yourself. Hearing the system prompt, Jiujiu forced himself to hold back the joy in his heart, but he collected the supplies on the ground without hesitation. The weapons of the 5 pursuers were very powerful, and they were all stored in the space. The weapons of the 5 butchers were the execution axes. Although they were only metal, Jiujiu just needed them, so he also stored them in the space. There were still 20 containers. Jiujiu spent some time melting the containers into metal blocks and storing the rest. Isaac stared at Jiujiu shamelessly collecting supplies, but his heart was surging like he had seen a ghost. What the hell is this? Superpower? Space system? Thinking of this, Isaac couldn't help but feel a little fear of Jiujiu in his heart. You know, he is good at biotechnology, but he doesn't know much about this mysterious power. At this time, Isaac had the idea of studying superpowers. And his idea was also very simple and crude, that is, to use the virus to stimulate the human body, and combine it with the terrifying computing power of the White Queen system to obtain the ability to defeat Jiujiu. This also indirectly led to Isaac not looking for trouble with Jiujiu before he was absolutely sure of defeating Jiujiu. Jiujiu didn't know Isaac's thoughts, otherwise he would regret scaring Isaac. He wanted Isaac to keep looking for trouble with him, after all. Every time Isaac comes, he may trigger a hidden mission, right? After the battle, Alice and others have become accustomed to Jiujiu collecting supplies all over the battlefield. After all, they have seen this more than once or twice. More than an hour later, seeing Jiujiu with a wretched smile on his face, he came back, and everyone went to the base from the elevator. This time, Jiujiu did not even hold a summary meeting, and returned to his room on the pretext of being tired. In the room, Jiujiu's consciousness entered the space and immediately began to repair the injured and damaged mechanical dog. Next, because of Isaac's fear of Jiujiu, the base was calm. If it weren't for the zombies attracted by the battle that day wandering around from time to time, everyone even felt that the end of the world had not come. Jiujiu also took advantage of this rare quiet time to not only repair the mechanical dog, but also increase the number of traps and mechanical flies to 100, and the number of mechanical dogs to 30, before stopping. This is not because the materials manufactured are not enough, but Jiujiu knows that these mechanical creations are enough. Leaving more supplies will help create better mechanical creatures later. As for the 2 spots for mechanical pets, Jiujiu is not in a hurry. The main reason is that it is not easy to find a dog that has not turned into a zombie in this world. Time passed as Jiujiu went out from time to time, killing zombies around the base and collecting supplies. Half a year later. On this day, in the evening, Jiujiu returned to the base from collecting supplies outside, and saw Ada Wong, who was full of excitement, actively greeted him. Before Jiujiu could react, he was hugged by the excited Ada Wong, who shouted excitedly. "Ah! Yi! Do you know? The research was successful, haha. The antidote was successfully developed. Are you happy? Yi." Hearing this, Jiujiu was also stunned, and after a while he also became happy. Of course, the happiest thing was that he was hugged by the goddess. He had always had thoughts about Ada Wong, but he didn't dare to express them. Now that he was hugged by the goddess, how could he not be happy? Just when Jiujiu was enjoying the goddess's embrace, Ada Wong seemed to have reacted, and pushed Jiujiu away generously, stretched out his hand to lift the short hair on his forehead and said, "Sorry, I'm too excited." Being pushed away by Ada Wong, Jiujiu felt a little disappointed, but said, "Oh, it's okay. I understand. I'm also very excited. Let's go see Dr. Ashford first." After that, Jiujiu ran past Ada Wong and hurried to the experimental area. Seeing Jiujiu shyly running away, Ada Wong was stunned at first, then laughed, and muttered for some reason. "What an interesting little man." After that, Ada Wong moved his long legs to chase after Jiujiu and walked towards the laboratory. 141 Antidote. Nuwa is born in the laboratory. Ashford sat blankly in his wheelchair, looking obsessively at a glass tube wrapped with metal in front of him. It can be seen from the metal gap that the liquid contained in the glass tube is as dark blue as the sea. Jiujiu rushed in and was stunned for a moment when he saw the medicine tube. "Yes, this thing in the potion tube is so beautiful." Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. The noise alarmed Dr. Ashford. When he turned around and saw Jiujiu, Ashford said excitedly, "Yi! I really succeeded, you know. I really succeeded. Haha." Hearing this, Jiujiu nodded excitedly and asked, "Dr. Ashford, are you sure? Can the T-virus be eliminated by just using this medicine? How to use it specifically?" Hearing this, Ashford nodded excitedly and said, "Yes, Yi. This is an antidote that spreads through the air. You only need one." As he spoke, Ashford raised his hand and extended a finger and continued. "It only takes one, and it can spread throughout the entire Earth through the air in half a year, killing the virus in every corner." Haha, I didn't expect that the antidote to the T-virus would have such characteristics. Haha. After speaking, Ashford shook his head and said with a smile, "It is the same as the T-virus. It has the characteristics of airborne transmission. I won't explain the principle in detail. I believe you are not interested in hearing it. Let's put it simply. It is capable of reactivating dead corpses and brains infected by viruses and inactivating them again, making them completely dead. Hearing this, Jiujiu also understood the root of the antidote. Isn't it the same as the antidote that Alice snatched back from Isaac in the finale? Just when I thought of this, the system prompt also sounded. Congratulations to the host for completing the world mission. Rescue Dr. Ashford, help him create a drug to solve the T-virus, and save the world. Reward experience *50,000, mechanical drone manufacturing drawing *1. Tip, the host level has been improved. Currently, it is level 20. Strength and physical strength are each increased by 5, intelligence, spirit, and agility are each increased by 1. They have been automatically assigned to the attribute panel. Please check the details by the host. Tip, the host level has been improved. Currently, it is level 21. Strength and physical strength are each increased by 5, intelligence, spirit, and agility are each increased by 1. They have been automatically assigned to the attribute panel. Please check the details by the host. World Mission 2 triggers. Activate the antidote in Raccoon City, the Umbrella headquarters, eliminate the zombie virus, completely destroy the Umbrella Company, kill the leader Isaac, 0-1, kill the leader Weskier, 0/1, and kill the Umbrella senior staff, 0/8, awarding 10,000 experience points. After hearing the system prompts, Jiujiu couldn't help but frown, but he couldn't ask the system at this time and said to Dr. Ashford. Dr. Ashford, then according to your suggestion, where would it be better for us to release the antidote? At this time, King Ada, who was standing behind the two of them, said. Have you ever thought about it, if we simply release the antidote, will the global crisis be completely solved? Even if the T-virus is solved this time, can you be sure that Umbrella will not develop A virus or B virus? Hearing this, Jiujiu immediately understood what King Ada meant, and also understood that King Ada wanted to use his own power to completely eliminate the protective umbrella. But even if Jiujiu knew about it, he would not expose King Ada. After all, her intention coincided with his mission, right? Hearing this, Ashford also fell silent, and he couldn't help but recall the days when he took the research results of T-virus and joined the Umbrella. In fact, his purpose in researching the T-virus was simply to hope that he could stand up and that his daughter Angela could grow up healthily. However, everything changed after Isaac exposed his greedy and cruel nature. Since then, Umbrella has deviated from its original intention of peace, dedicating itself to treating diseases and serving the public. It's not like he didn't know about the cruel things that Protective Umbrella had done behind the scenes over the years. He also understood Isaac's character of not giving up until he reached his goal, and he had a vague idea in his heart. So, Ashford raised his head, looked at Jiujiu and Ada Wong seriously and said, I understand, there is a saying in China called, eliminate all evil. Yi, is that what you say? After finishing speaking, without waiting for Jiujiu to answer, Ashford continued. I understand what Miss Ada Wong means. If we want the world to restore order, we must make the Umbrella Company disappear completely, then. I implore you two to bring the antidote and release it at the main base of the Umbrella. Hearing this, Jiujiu and King Ada both nodded and agreed. At this moment, King Ada said. Now that the antidote has been made, Dr. Yi, Ashford, should we give this beautiful thing a nice name? Hearing this, Jiujiu and Ashford were both stunned at the same time. Jiujiu didn't care and was not very interested in this kind of thing. But Ashford was different. He had an inexplicable feeling about the antidote he had worked so hard to research, so he nodded and said. Well. Miss Ada Wong is right, I should give my child a nice name. What should I name it? Miss Ada Wong, Yi, do you have any good suggestions? Hearing this, Ada Wong could not help but look at Jiujiu, who was still unaware and was in a trance. Seeing Ada Wong's gaze cast on Jiujiu, Ashford also reacted immediately, thinking that the reason why he and his daughter could survive was because of Jiujiu's existence, so he said. Yi, we can all survive, it can be said that you saved us. Then, I think the naming rights of this potion will be given to you. Okay. Jiujiu, who was in a trance, was stunned when he heard this, and pointed his finger at his nose in disbelief and asked. What? Me? No way, this thing was researched by you, it's your child, shouldn't you name it? Hearing this, not only Ada Wong and Ashford, but also Alice, Carlos and others who came after hearing the news, all nodded and said in unison. Yi, you are qualified. Yes, Yi. You don't have to be modest, you are the most qualified among us. No need to hesitate, Yi. You saved everyone. Without you, there would be no Dr. Ashford now, and it would be even more impossible to make an antidote. You can't be better at naming. Hearing everyone's chatter, Jiujiu felt very proud and comfortable in his heart, thinking. You are kind enough, and it is not in vain for me to save you with all my efforts. Since everyone agrees to name himself, Jiujiu has nothing to be proud of. So after thinking about it in his mind, he thought of a name and said to everyone. Why not, call it Niwa. $142 freshly released mechanical drone. The reason for choosing the name Niwa. First of all, Jiujiu is from China, so of course it is best to choose a Chinese name. Secondly, once this name is known to the whole world, my trip to this world has not been in vain, right? Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. Sure enough, when everyone heard Jiujiu's strange pronunciation of his name, they didn't know what the name meant, and they all looked at Jiujiu in confusion. Although Ada Wong is of Chinese descent like Jiujiu, he doesn't understand what Niwa represents. Seeing this, Jiujiu felt that he had an obligation to help China promote Chinese myths in the world, so he cleared his throat and explained. Niwa is an ancient myth that originated in China. According to legend, she is a goddess with human hands and snakes, and the Chinese people were also made of mud and water by her, which means she is the ancestor of the Chinese people. Secondly, she is also a kind goddess. During a war between the gods, a god made a hole in the sky. When she saw that all the people in the world were about to be destroyed, it was Niwa who took action, collected colorful sacred stones, and restored the sky. Let's see, is it appropriate to name the antidote after this goddess? Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be immersed in the myths and legends told by Jiujiu. Although Jiujiu's speech was concise, it did not prevent everyone from using their imagination, and they couldn't help but admire this Chinese goddess. After a while, King Ada first agreed. Yi, the name you chose is so meaningful. Isn't our world in dire straits now? Since it was Niwa who patched the sky and saved the world in ancient times, it would be more appropriate to let her save the world this time. But that's it. Hearing this, everyone also started to agree with each other. Finally, Dr. Ashford, who created the antidote, made the final decision. Okay, since everyone likes this name, let's call our antidote Niwa. When the sound fell, everyone couldn't help but cheer. Then, Dr. Ashford solemnly handed the antidote Niwa into Jiujiu's hands, and asked Jiujiu to keep it properly and then rushed to the umbrella base to release it. Jiujiu also solemnly took the antidote Niwa and put it into the space. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when the insight medicine disappeared into Jiujiu's hands. Everyone understands the truth that the absolutely safe place in this world is Jiujiu's space power. Not to mention Jiujiu's extremely powerful skills, there are only a few people who can snatch Niwa away from him. Even his dozens of mechanical dogs, no force in this world can defeat him. Taking advantage of this enthusiasm, Jiujiu simply announced the next arrangement. This time when I go out to find the umbrella base, I only plan to take Ada Wong and Alice with me. It's better for the others to stay at the base to guard it. Hearing this, Alice and King Ada nodded solemnly. Although the others also wanted to follow, they all knew that they were not strong enough and following would be a complete burden, so they sighed and accepted Jiujiu's arrangement. After returning to his room from the laboratory, Jiujiu asked the system. System, why do I get less experience in subsequent missions? System. What's not easy to understand? Your strength is getting stronger and stronger. Are those tasks still difficult for you? Do you think your efforts and gains are proportional? Hearing this, Jiujiu was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly came to his senses. He also knew that he had received many benefits in this world. Not to mention other things, just talking about level, it was like being promoted to level 5 on a rocket. What else is good about it? Too picky. After thinking about it, Jiujiu stopped thinking about it. What interested him more now was manufacturing drawings of mechanical drones. Thinking of this, Jiujiu entered the space consciously, picked up the drawing and looked at it carefully. But it was discovered that the regular function of the mechanical drone is the same as that of the mechanical fly, which is to monitor the ground situation. The difference is that the mechanical drone can fly at an altitude of 10,000 meters, has a stronger endurance, and is almost silent except for a slight engine sound. The most powerful thing is the weapon he carries. The weapons carried by Jiujiu's mechanical drone are not conventional missile bullets, but energy bullets like mechanical dogs. Although the rate of fire is not as fast as that of a machine gun, the shooting range is far greater than that of a mechanical dog. A sniper rifle that can reach 1,000 meters and is as powerful as this distance can be regarded as adding a long-distance sniping weapon to Jiujiu. And his biggest advantage is that he can also carry 10 mechanical traps. Seeing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but rub his teeth. What else is there to say? Having the mechanical 5 is equivalent to having an additional airdrop weapon. It's amazing to think about it. A drone carrying a trap suddenly flew hundreds of meters above the enemy's head from the sky, and dropped a trap into the enemy. That picture shouldn't be too beautiful. Without hesitation, Jiujiu began to use energy and materials to create mechanical drones in space. Jiujiu was amazed when this was made. Compared with making a mechanical dog, although the drone is simple, its size reaches a total length of 5 meters, which is actually much larger than the mechanical dog. After Jiujiu spent an hour making and assembling a mechanical drone, what he saw was a miniature stealth fighter was parked in the space. It was all black, less than 1.5 meters tall, but it exuded a faint murderous aura. Let's look at its data. Name: mechanical drone. Full capacity load: 240, 500. Maximum endurance: 12 hours of continuous supersonic flight. Function: monitoring and shooting timely images, long-range sniping targets, bombing targets. The energy in brackets is the maximum energy of the energy bullet on the drone. Jiujiu understood this without arrows. However, after reading these data, Jiujiu couldn't help scratching his head in distress. No, the consumption of this drone is too high. The full energy of a drone is 900. If there are so many drones, Jiujiu may not be able to replenish the full energy within a day. After thinking about it, Jiujiu decided to build only 4 drones for the time being. After all, this drone is controlled by Red Queen, which saves Jiujiu from distracting himself to control it, right? Thinking of this, Jiujiu continued to immerse himself in the space to manufacture it. One night later, 4 mechanical drones were manufactured and filled with energy. 2 days later, Jiujiu and the other 2, who had made all the preparations, drove a motorcycle and left the base. This time, I don't know how many zombies I will encounter on the road. However, the 3 of them are brave and strong people. With Jiujiu's 32 mechanical dogs leading the way, they saved the 3 of them a lot of trouble. $143 mechanical drone first battle. It took almost half a month for the 3 to return to the suburbs of Raccoon City. Raccoon City today is no longer what it once was. The buildings in the suburbs are dilapidated, and occasionally there are sporadic zombies wandering aimlessly. Seeing such a Raccoon City, Jiujiu sighed that the current Raccoon City is really quiet, and there are not so many zombies surrounding it more than 10 years later. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. Of course, this is also because of Jiujiu. If he hadn't asked Ashford to research the addition of drugs so early in advance, this world would have been the territory of zombies long ago, and there would be so many living people. In addition, Umbrella occupied Raccoon City, and before it had time to attract zombies from surrounding cities to protect the base, Jiujiu and the other 2 would not have entered Raccoon City so easily. And obviously, Isaac didn't notice the arrival of Jiujiu and the other 2. This is also thanks to Red Queen. Long before leaving, Jiujiu asked Red Queen to control the satellite above his head, so that the Umbrella, which may be monitoring the base at all times, could not see the 3 people leaving. In fact, it is true. Isaac is indeed monitoring the base at all times. Although he has no way to deal with Jiujiu for the time being, he does not want to be unable to grasp Jiujiu's whereabouts. Now he has transplanted the newly researched biological chip into his brain, and its main function is the extreme combat system. During this period of time, Isaac stayed in the training room to adapt to the combat method brought to him by the chip system. Straight face, straight face. What Jiujiu could not imagine the most was that Isaac was worthy of being the biggest villain boss in the world, and he was even more cruel to others than to himself. In order to defeat Jiujiu, Isaac even took the risk of trying to inject the weakened T-virus. Maybe it was because he was the biggest villain boss in the world and was favored by God. He was lucky enough to survive the danger brought by the virus fusion. He injected the fusion virus once a week, which made his physical fitness slowly grow. The result is that in more than a month, he has been injected with weakened viruses for a total of 6 times. Although his physical fitness cannot catch up with Jiujiu, with the help of the biological chip, his combat effectiveness is actually not much worse than Jiujiu himself. At this time, Isaac was in the training room, and his opponent was 50 Umbrella security personnel holding batons. After a flash of light in Isaac's eyes, his body suddenly moved and rushed towards the 50 people on the opposite side. The speed was so fast that it was only a little slower than Jiujiu now. With a rapid flash of his figure, Isaac rushed into the crowd. Before the 50 people could react, 5 of them were killed instantly by Isaac. Their bodies flew up, and they turned several somersaults in the air before falling to the ground, but they had already fainted. Until then, the remaining people reacted, and they all shouted and waved batons to surround Isaac. Unfortunately, despite their large number, Isaac relied on the biochip to calculate the surrounding environment, number of people, attack data, and ways to deal with the enemy in the blink of an eye. Next, people were constantly being knocked flying. 3 minutes later, all 50 people were knocked to the ground by Isaac without exception. Most of them were knocked unconscious by Isaac's heavy blows, and a few were lying on the ground rolling and shouting. It was obvious that the vulnerable parts of the body were hit hard and temporarily lost their combat ability. Isaac, who was standing in the crowd, had a flash of light in his eyes again and then disappeared. Jiujiu glanced at the sparring men on the ground with satisfaction. Isaac raised his hands and tidied up his unwrinkled suit sleeves in a gentlemanly manner, and turned to leave the training room. Jiujiu and the other 2 had already entered the center of Raccoon City. The sporadic zombies they encountered along the way were killed by 32 mechanical dogs. Soon, the 3 came to the old site of the beehive, which had become a huge sinkhole. The T-X in front of us was nearly 40 to 50 meters high, and a lot of water had gathered at the bottom of the T-X, forming a lake. If it weren't for the broken sewer pipes and other building debris exposed on the wall of the T-X, people would have thought that this was originally a T-X lake. At this moment, the voice of Red Queen sounded in Jiujiu's mind. "Sir, there are many zombie dogs around, and the number is a bit large. Do we need to arrange defense in advance?" Hearing this, Jiujiu's heart moved, thinking. Since the mechanical drone was created, its power has not been formally tested. Otherwise, let's release them this time to see how powerful they are. Thinking of this, Jiujiu did not hesitate, and released all 4 mechanical drones in the space with a wave of his hand, and let Red Queen take over the task of controlling the mechanical drones to kill those zombie dogs. Red Queen was very excited to get the order to control the mechanical drones, and immediately agreed to take over the control of the 4 drones. For low engine sounds of woo-woo-woo sounded, and the 4 drones rose into the sky with tail flames. Seeing Jiujiu take out the drone, Alice and Ada Wong tacitly did not ask Jiujiu, and turned around and looked behind them at the same time. After a while, a dense sound came from a distance, which sounded like the footsteps of some animal running. At this moment, the 2 of them suddenly became nervous. You should know that since the end of the world, there are very few animals that are still alive. Most of them have been infected by the virus and turned into zombies. Then, there were so many animal footsteps here suddenly, and the 2 knew without thinking that things were serious. Even with Jiujiu and his 32 mechanical dogs, the 2 were still worried about being surrounded here. Not long after, the 2 saw countless dogs rushing towards the 3. Among these dogs, there were all kinds of types, from small ornamental dogs like Chihuahuas to large Great Danes and Neapolitan Mastiffs up to 90 centimeters in size. In short, the pressure on the 2 was great. It was no wonder that Alice and Ada Wong were nervous. After all, zombie dogs were much more powerful than zombies, not to mention that there were so many of them. The next moment, the 4 mechanical drones that flew into the air swooped down from the sky, and when they were 1,000 meters away, they began to shoot, bang bang bang. The 3 saw that the largest zombie dogs in the front all had their foreheads exploded, and they fell to the ground and continued to slide for a few meters before they could no longer get up. Although the 4 mechanical drones did not carry machine guns, their shooting speed was quite good, with a speed of 3 rounds in 2 seconds, which also killed many zombie dogs in the front. Then, when the 4 mechanical drones swooped down to 100 meters above the zombie dogs' heads, they dropped 10 black discs one after another like flowers. Alice and Ada Wong saw that they didn't need to ask Jiujiu to know that these projected things were the weapons that Jiujiu often used and called mechanical traps by Jiujiu. $144 ready to fight. Sure enough, after these traps fell to the ground or were shot by zombie dogs, they would bounce into the air and shoot out dense arrows and steel balls. As a result, the charging zombie dogs fell to the ground one after another, and the momentum of the charging zombie dogs visible to the naked eye was lost. Next, the mechanical drone hovered over the zombie dogs, shooting energy bullets from time to kill the persistent zombie dogs. When the zombie dogs that had good luck rushed forward 30 meters away in front of Jiujiu and the others, all 32 mechanical dogs moved and faced the group of zombie dogs. During the charge, he opened his mouth and sprayed out energy bullets, killing the zombie dog at the front first, and then threw down those near him. He also used mouth bites, claw strikes, and tail stings at the same time. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. Alice and Ada Wong saw that no zombie dog could rush 2 meters in front of the 3 of them. Such power shocked both Alice and Ada Wong. Also, there were so many zombie dogs. Not to mention that both of them were strong female warriors, they did not dare to face so many zombie dogs head-on. And what about Jiujiu? No one even touched it, just a group of mechanical creatures took care of it. Such strength indeed made the 2 of them admire him. After the zombie dogs were dealt with, the Red Queen controlled the mechanical drone and landed in front of Jiujiu. Jiujiu took back the space without hesitation. After filling up their energy and equipping a new mechanical trap, the energy was also consumed. Carefully descend along the wall of the pit to the bottom of the pit, and you will arrive at the former hive. Following the path in my memory, I found the former tunnel entrance. When she came here, Alice couldn't help but sigh. Looking at this familiar environment, she missed Ren and the others who escaped from the hive with her. He led the 2 of them through the exhaust fan and into the interior of the hive. As soon as they entered the hive, the Red Queen reminded Jiujiu that the whereabouts of the 3 of them had been discovered by the other party. The opponent's ability was actually comparable to that of the Red Queen. Although the 2 sides were engaged in a battle for control, they were helpless and neither could do anything to the other. Of course Jiujiu knew after hearing this that there was also an intelligent program here, and the one who could fight against the Red Queen was the Red Queen's twin sister, the White Queen. So, since Queen Bai already knows about the arrival of the 3 of them, naturally Big Boo's Isaac must also know about it. Next, it's time to meet Isaac's blockade. He told Alice and King Ada to be careful. Because the passage was too narrow, Jiujiu left only 2 wolves as guards, and the rest were all mechanical flies. At this time, Isaac was in a specially built luxurious office underneath the hive. The whole person was nestled behind a boss's chair, with their feet crossed on the desk, holding a glass full of red wine in their hands, and watching with great interest the pictures projected onto the wall by the Red Queen on the screen. The figures and every move of the 3 people in Jiujiu. Seeing the 3 people entering the hive, Isaac raised an evil smile on his lips, raised his glass and said, "Mysterious Chinese boy, my revenge goddess Alice, and King Ada, welcome you." Hearing this, Weskier, who was looking solemn behind him, couldn't help but trembled, and then returned to normal. After raising his head and drinking down the red wine in the glass, Isaac said to Weskier without looking back, "Weskier, you can hold a warm welcome ceremony for our 3 guests." Suddenly, Isaac's face turned gloomy, and his voice became ruthless and cold as he said, "It's best to capture them alive. I want to entertain them myself." Hearing this, Weskier bowed expressionlessly and said, "Yes, sir." After saying that, Weskier walked out of the office and summoned all the security personnel at the headquarters to prepare an ambush and attack on Jiujiu and the others. Walking through the long corridor, the 3 of them passed through the former Restaurant B and finally arrived at the console outside the Red Queen's control room. The door to the laser tunnel in front of him had long since disappeared, and the tunnel had long been abandoned. Jiujiu naturally knew that the original operating platform was the elevator that went down to the underground base. With the Red Queen around, it didn't take Jiujiu's energy to figure out the mechanism to open the elevator. At Queen Hong's prompt, Jiujiu turned on the mechanism, and the console began to sink slowly toward the ground amid a clang, click sound. Seeing Jiujiu and the others finding the mechanism effortlessly, Isaac looked a little surprised. Did you think it would take the three of you a while to find the trap? Unexpectedly, he found the trap in just such a short time, which was beyond Isaac's expectation. On the other side, Weskier has gathered all the security personnel, led by an Asian young man like Jiujiu. This young man is 1.8 meters tall and does not look very strong, but his whole person feels very cold and ruthless. If Jiujiu were here, he would definitely recognize this person at a glance. He appeared in the sixth part of the movie, Umbrella's security commander, Isaac's loyal dog thug, G. Queen White's voice came from Weskier's headset. Sir, the enemy has found the elevator and is entering the underground base. Please be ready for battle. After hearing this, Weskier's expression remained unchanged, and he waved his hands to surround him under the elevator, ready to shoot at any time. On the elevator, Jiujiu and the other two stared at the densely packed coffin-like nutrient nests hanging on the surrounding walls. Without Jiujiu's explanation, King Ada gnashed his teeth and said, Alice, did you see it? These are the places where those government officials, businessmen, and so-called elites who colluded with the Umbrella are sleeping. In order to achieve the goal of a small number of people occupying all the resources on the Earth, they agreed to Isaac's suggestion and released the virus worldwide, causing a global zombie disaster. Alice fell silent after hearing this. What can she, who has always been a saint, say? Jiujiu shrugged and said, This is normal, isn't it? These people have such ideas, which only means that they are too self-righteous. Since the beginning of human civilization, are there not many people like this? People who always think they are superior can rule over most ordinary people. They don't think there is anything wrong with doing this, right? Hearing this, King Ada also fell silent. Alice, who had been silent for a long time, took over and said, Isn't the purpose of our coming here to destroy their beautiful dreams? What do you think, Yi? Hearing this, Jiujiu shrugged again and stopped talking, because he had received a notice from the Red Queen that there were already hundreds of security personnel ready to attack them. Jiujiu had already prepared for such a result. To deal with these people, Jiujiu had no mercy, and just let the mechanical dogs take care of them. $145 The battle between Umbrella Technology and System Black Technology. The elevator continued to descend, and it was about to reach the bottom. Jiujiu took Alice and stood at the innermost part of the elevator, and released the wolf pack from the space without hesitation. There was no way, Jiujiu wanted to release all the mechanical dogs at once, but unfortunately, the space on the elevator was too small, and only 3 people and 5 mechanical dogs could fit. Getting closer and closer to the ground, the 2 werewolves and the security personnel surrounding the bottom of the elevator were ready for battle at the same time. When it was 5 meters away from the ground, the building on the ground floor just appeared, and Jiujiu shook his hand without hesitation and threw 2 mechanical traps out of the gap. Immediately, a cry of surprise came from the ground. Damn, Grenade, lie down. After a burst of panic, there was a hurried sound of footsteps, followed by a series of whoosh sounds for 3 seconds. 3 seconds later, 5 mechanical dogs jumped down from the gap that had become larger. Jiujiu did not hesitate, and released the mechanical dogs in the space one after another, rushing out from the exposed gaps one after another. The 3 heard the sound of gunfire and screams from below. With a clang, the elevator fell to the ground and stopped suddenly. Jiujiu took the lead, followed closely by Alice and Ada Wong, and rushed out. At an elevator, they saw the Umbrella security personnel wearing black tight combat uniforms and helmets lying on the ground. In front of them was a large hall, and gunshots and screams were heard from time to time in the distance. Obviously, the battlefield has moved from the elevator to the depths of the hall. The 3 immediately crouched and rushed forward quickly, and from time to time they could see the figures of mechanical dogs flying in and out, chasing and killing the surviving Umbrella security personnel. It was also their bad luck that the formation of the encirclement was disrupted by the trap thrown by Jiujiu. Then the wolf warrior led 3 wolves into the crowd and slaughtered them crazily, and then the mechanical dogs rushed into the crowd one after another. Even though they numbered more than 200 people, they were no match for the mechanical dogs and were quickly defeated. Further away, Weskier stood in front of a passage with his hands behind his back, looking solemn. Behind him were 10 combat robots with square heads and brains about 3 meters tall, and 5 rows of 100 security teams holding guns at an angle. Obviously, Weskier knew that Jiujiu was powerful and knew that it was unlikely to surround and kill Jiujiu and the other two in front of the elevator. The reason why he did not deploy all his forces there was that he had too many shadows after the battle with Jiujiu. Also, the inexplicable explosion of 19 helicopters in the air made Weskier afraid of Jiujiu. There was nothing he could do about it. Isaac's request was to capture them alive, so Weskier could not blow up the elevator. But Jiujiu's mechanical dog group was too powerful, so Weskier had to sacrifice most of his men and consume the energy of those mechanical creatures to have a chance to capture Jiujiu and the other two alive. The next moment, many security personnel who were previously deployed at the elevator position rushed to Weskier in panic. As soon as they saw Weskier and his men waiting in formation, they immediately wanted to rush to the formation. Weskier would not let them attack the formation, and raised his hand unceremoniously and said, "Turn back to fight the enemy, and those who dare to attack the formation will die." As soon as the voice fell, the hundreds of people behind Weskier all raised their guns and aimed at them. Moreover, the 10 robots also raised the machine guns fixed on their mechanical arms with a squeak sound and aimed at them. As a result, all the people who escaped turned around silently, standing or squatting in front of Weskier and forming a formation again, with their guns all aimed at the back. The gunshots and screams gradually stopped, and in the darkness where the lights in the hall could not reach, the figure of the mechanical dog slowly walked out. Jiujiu and the other two hid behind a pillar, observing the situation in front. The next moment, all 32 mechanical dogs showed their figures, opened their mouths and sprayed energy bullets from all corners. The security personnel on the opposite side also fired back. For a moment, the trajectory of the white energy bullets sprayed by the mechanical dogs and the trajectory of the bullets fired by the security personnel were intertwined, and the gunshots sounded like popcorn. Mixed with the screams of people being hit, people kept falling to the ground, injured or dead. Weskier looked at his men dying in front of him expressionlessly, unmoved. At this time, he was thinking about how to lure Jiujiu, who controlled these mechanical creatures, out to capture the thief and the king. Unfortunately, Jiujiu had already known Weskier's backhand through Red Queen, so how could he easily go out and give himself up? To be honest, Jiujiu was not afraid of the more than 100 Umbrella security personnel. But Red Queen told him that the robot behind Weskier was the latest defensive weapon developed by Umbrella. The function was very advanced, and the most important thing was that the firepower was very strong. Not only were the machine guns on their mechanical arms powerful, but the most important thing was the small rocket launchers on their shoulders, which Jiujiu could never avoid. Nonsense, even if Jiujiu could run faster, it would be a miracle if he could outrun the dense bombardment of small rockets. After all the men died, the 32 mechanical dogs shifted their targets and began to attack Weskier's team. Weskier had hit at the back of the team a moment ago, and 2 rows of men holding riot shields were already protecting the attackers in front. It has to be said that the quality of the anti-riot shield of the Umbrella is really good. Energy bullets hitting it can only make a deep hole, but they cannot penetrate the anti-riot shield. However, don't underestimate the power of energy bullets. One energy bullet may not be able to penetrate an explosion-proof shield, but what if several energy bullets hit the same location? The answer is of course that it can penetrate the shield. All the security personnel opened fire at the group of mechanical dogs that appeared. Although the bullets could only hit their bodies with sparks, it was good if they could hit them, and it would be even better if they could contain the group of mechanical dogs. The 10 robots also moved with a clang, crossed the shield queue, and walked towards the 32 mechanical dogs step by step. Jiujiu knew that next, it would be time for modern technology to compete with System Black technology. King Ada and Alice, who were hiding behind the pillars and watching the battle, were also very nervous. Especially King Ada not only asked Jiujiu in a low voice, "Can your mechanical dog defeat those robots?" No wonder she has no confidence in Jiujiu's mechanical dog. She knows that Umbrella is not only powerful in biotechnology, but also in the high-tech field. This is just a robot. Although it is compared with the robots in the Terminator, considering that it is only 2002, it is already a very powerful weapon. 146 The mechanical dog and the robot died together. Jiujiu was not worried at all. After all, except for the 30 wolves controlled by Red Queen, the fighting power of the war wolves was very strong. Google search reading. The biggest advantage of mechanical dogs is that they are more flexible than these so-called robots. Even if these robots have aiming functions, they may not be able to lock onto the flexible and fast mechanical dogs. Sure enough, the next moment, the 30 wolves, under the control of Red Queen, dispersed and surrounded the 10 robots. The two sides immediately started a fierce exchange of fire. It was not really a gunfight. The main reason was that the 10 wolves used their flexible speed to contain the robots. The remaining wolves looked for opportunities to rush to the front of the robots, climbed on the robots, found the control core of the robots, destroyed it and made the robots completely shut down. There was no way. The power of the energy bullets shot from the mouth of the mechanical dogs was still a little small after all. Although it could leave bullet marks on the surface of the robot, it could not completely penetrate the shell of the robot, and it could not cause any substantial damage to the robot. Jiujiu saw two mechanical dogs rushing behind the robot, and climbed onto the robot with one jump. Under the control of Red Queen, they destroyed the robot's huge square head. Such a simple operation stumped the robot, because their arms could not bend completely upwards and turn the barrels to shoot at the top of their heads. Although the barrels were raised, they could only shoot at enemies at a 90-degree angle above their heads. Can this be said to be the negligence of Umbrella? Weskier, who also saw this scene, also had a black face, secretly cursing the scientists of Umbrella for being trash, and they didn't even consider such an obvious loophole. However, Weskier is indeed a ruthless man. Since he can only watch the robot being completely abused by Jiujiu's mechanical dog, it is better to pull the two mechanical dogs to die together, which can be regarded as playing their greatest role. The next moment, Weskier issued an order for the robot entangled by the mechanical dog to self-destruct through the earphone in his ear. Sure enough, the next moment Jiujiu was confidently preparing to applaud the mechanical dog. But he saw a robot with a mechanical dog climbing on its body, and it exploded with a loud bang. The huge flames immediately engulfed the robot and the two mechanical dogs, and metal parts and broken limbs flew everywhere. The voice of the Red Queen also rang in Jiujiu's mind. "Sorry, sir, the enemy exploded too quickly, and I didn't have time to evacuate the wolf pack." Hearing this, Jiujiu sighed and communicated with the Red Queen. "It's not your fault, Red Queen. With such a fast self-explosion speed, no one can escape. However, it's also good to be able to destroy these 10 big guys." As he spoke, 10 robots exploded one after another, taking away a total of 23 mechanical dogs of Jiujiu. There was no way, Jiujiu wanted to use a mechanical dog to die with the opponent, but it was a pity. The destructive speed of a mechanical dog was not fast enough, and it had no time to destroy a robot, and 3 mechanical dogs were blown up by rockets fired by the robot. There was no other way. In order not to cause too much damage, Jiujiu had to make the wise choice of cutting off his arm. The technological war between the two sides ended. Jiujiu's side still had 9 mechanical dogs left, and although Weskier's side had no mechanical dogs, it still had more than 100 armed personnel. Before Jiujiu could let Red Queen continue to control the mechanical dogs to fight, Weskier had already asked his men to raise heavy firepower. First, grenades were thrown out continuously, covering the ground in front of them, and the target was the remaining mechanical dogs. This was not over yet, and 2 heavy machine guns were also set up. Fortunately, Red Queen reacted quickly and immediately controlled the mechanical dogs to run and dodge. Unfortunately, the explosion range was too dense, and 2 wolf packs were still affected by the grenades. The steel balls hit the same position continuously, breaking the limbs of the mechanical dogs and spreading them on the ground to become live targets. Fortunately, the 2 werewolves were very smart and had already hidden behind the pillars. They would occasionally emerge and shoot energy bullets at the opposing formation. Jiujiu, who saw this scene, finally stopped looking down on Umbrella. To put it bluntly, humans are the race that is best at learning to fight. In the past, the people of Umbrella were caught off guard by the mechanical dogs because they did not understand them. But humans are still humans after all, and they can always find ways to defeat the enemy after failure. Now, Weskier did so. Although the mechanical dog is powerful, Weskier seized on such obvious shortcomings as its limbs. Ordinary bullets can't hurt the mechanical dog, so I still have a chance with grenades, bombs, and heavy machine guns. This is also the convenience of Weskier taking advantage of the terrain. Otherwise, with the super high speed of the mechanical dog, fighting in the wild, it is not certain who will suffer. But this is the current situation, and the mechanical dog is restrained by Weskier. Seeing the mechanical dog being suppressed by Weskier, King Ada asked worriedly. Yi, what should we do? Your mechanical dog is suppressed by them. If this continues, it will be difficult for us to rush in and kill Isaac and Weskier. Hearing this, Jiujiu shook his head and smiled confidently. There are always more solutions than difficulties. As long as you use your brain, there is no problem that cannot be solved, right? After speaking, Jiujiu contacted Red Queen in his mind and asked Red Queen to control the mechanical fly to attack Weskier's shield formation and heavy firepower units. Red Queen received the order and immediately controlled all the mechanical flies walking in the corner of the hall. The next moment, under the control of Red Queen, every two mechanical flies cooperated with each other, one hit their helmets at high speed, and the other rushed in from the smashed position, aiming at their eyes. Sure enough, before Weskier could be happy for a while, the shieldman in front of him inexplicably broke a small hole in the helmet glass with a pop, and then he let out a shrill scream, took off his helmet and rolled on the ground holding his eyes. In just 1 second, all the shieldmen fell to the ground, and before Weskier's men could react, the remaining 7 mechanical dogs all rushed out, and the energy quanta were precisely sprayed from their mouths, knocking the machine gunner who controlled the heavy machine gun to the ground. Jiujiu also took advantage of this gap and quickly rushed from the shadows to a position 150 meters away from them. The next second, he took out the trap from the space and threw it into the crowd with a shake of his hand. Good guy, this is the passage position. Although the passage was fairly wide, they were so densely packed together that the trap had the largest possible killing range. In just 3 seconds, more than 70 of the 100 people fell down, causing the rest to retreat in fear. Then, 7 mechanical dogs rushed out and charged into the crowd. 147 mutated Weskier. When Weskier realized something was wrong, he slipped back into Isaac's office early. Although most of the remaining security personnel were slaughtered by mechanical dogs. But there are still a few ruthless people who hugged the mechanical dog before dying, pulled out the ring of the grenade on their body, and died together with the mechanical dog. I saw with my own eyes that 2 more mechanical dogs had their limbs blown off by grenades, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't heartbroken. However, Jiujiu had no time to feel bad, so he had better seize the time to kill Isaac and Weskier to complete the mission. After stepping over the corpses on the ground and putting the remains of the mechanical dog into the space, the 3 of them entered the passage and walked towards Isaac's office. In his office hands, Isaac sipped the red wine from the glass with a gloomy face, and beside him stood Weskier, who was bowing slightly. Isaac didn't even look at Weskier, his eyes were still looking at the figures of Jiujiu and the others projected on the screen. After a long moment of silence, Isaac seemed to have suddenly made a decision. Without seeing how he moved, his body suddenly disappeared from the chair and suddenly appeared in front of Weskier the next second. Weskier felt a gust of wind blow by him, and his neck was held in Isaac's hand. Before he could react, a needle was inserted into his neck. Immediately afterwards, a cold liquid was injected into his neck, and in the next second it quickly entered his whole body along with the blood. An icy cold enveloped Weskier, making him unable to move or even shout. Isaac retracted his hands expressionlessly, walked slowly back to the chair and sat down, picked up the wine glass again and said without looking at Weskier, "I will inject you with an improved T-virus. If you can resist the virus, then you can gain mutation and become extremely powerful people. If you can't fight it, you will become an irrational monster. Ugh. But the good news is, no matter what you become, you have a chance to kill those 3 people to avenge yourself." Hearing this, Weskier stood there unable to move, with a look of hatred in his eyes behind his sunglasses. Of course he knew how terrifying the improved T-virus was, and he had seen with his own eyes countless times how those who had been injected with the virus endured the corrosive process of the virus. After such a long time, no matter how strong the person was, he could not persist in the final virus fusion and turned into a mindless zombie. And he was injected with the virus by Isaac himself, how could he not hate it? At this moment, the erosion of the virus became stronger and stronger, and the bone marrow in his body seemed to be boiling. It hurt so much that he wanted to die immediately. It's a pity that under such pain, he couldn't move at all, even if he wanted to bite his tongue and commit suicide, he couldn't. The next moment, the blood in his body seemed to start to boil, and his entire brain became numb, as if his consciousness was gradually leaving him. Weskier had a feeling like he was going to die soon. He was unwilling, very unwilling. He hasn't killed Jiujiu and Isaac yet, he can't just die like this. Thinking of these two people, Weskier's brain, which was about to lose consciousness, suddenly woke up. Taking advantage of this short period of wakefulness, Weskier shouted in his heart. I can't die, I haven't taken revenge yet, I haven't killed Isaac to replace him and become the leader of Umbrella, I have to survive. Isaac stared at Weskier for a long time, the surprise in his eyes getting stronger and stronger. Perhaps, even Isaac did not expect that Weskier would be able to resist the virus. Even though he had been injected with the virus, he really didn't believe that there were people in the world who could fuse the virus like him and Alice. Otherwise, in the past year or so, among so many experimental products, there would be no one who could successfully fuse the virus like him. However, he was impressed by Weskier today. After so long, Weskier could still maintain his sanity and not turn into a zombie, maybe. Will Weskier bring him unexpected gains? Thinking of this, Isaac simply stood up and watched Weskier's changes carefully. 10 minutes passed, just when Jiujiu and the others were about to arrive at the office. Weskier suddenly changed. Weskier, who was already half-kneeling on the ground, suddenly raised his head and let out a howl like a wild beast. The next moment, Weskier stood up from the ground, raised his hands halfway, and leaned back as much as possible. With a hissing sound, Weskier's shirt and suit all tore apart. In Isaac's eyes, it seemed as if Weskier's height had also become taller. At this time, Weskier, who had thorns on his upper body, slowly lowered his head and looked at Isaac. Isaac's mouth opened slightly and he looked at Weskier with a look of disbelief and excitement. At this time, Weskier didn't have any big changes at first glance. He has indeed increased in height. His original height of almost 1.9 meters has become more than 2 meters. His appearance was still the same as before, but the sunglasses on his eyes were gone, and the exposed eyes became blood-red and heartless, looking very strange. Weskier looked at Isaac coldly for a while, and the next moment Weskier opened his mouth to Isaac. A scene like in a movie appeared. Weskier opened his mouth, and his normal human mouth suddenly split open, blooming like a flower. This flower occupied half of Weskier's face, and the 4 petals of his mouth each had several sharp fangs. This was not over yet, a tongue covered with thorns shot out from the middle of the petals, and shot out 3 meters away, aiming at Isaac's head standing there. Just when the tongue was about to hit Isaac, Isaac tilted his head slightly, and dodged by the edge of the tongue in a hair's breadth. The tongue missed and suddenly retracted. Unfortunately, before it retracted into his mouth, Isaac's hand suddenly raised, and the wine glass in his hand suddenly hit his tongue. With a crash, the wine glass shattered, and the glass shards cut the skin of the tongue, leaving only half of the red wine glass deeply embedded in the tongue. The next moment, Isaac's body suddenly disappeared again, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of Weskier. Weskier didn't even have time to react before he was hit hard on the chin. With a bang, Weskier's body, which weighed about 140 kilograms, flew backwards. The tongue that had been ejected also retracted into his mouth at this time, and the half of the wine glass that had been stuck in the tongue also fell to the ground and broke into 2 pieces. It flew all the way to the wall, and then with a bang, it hit the wall heavily and fell to the ground. $148 careless Jiujiu. The intense pain made Weskier close his open mouth. He lifted his upper body with both hands and looked at Isaac in disbelief. The blood on the corner of Weskier's mouth was so obvious. HX.com. Isaac clapped his hands, walked back to his desk, and slowly poured himself a glass of red wine. He was not worried that Weskier would attack him from behind. In fact, Isaac was not worried about Weskier's sneak attack. He was indeed confident that Weskier was not his opponent at all, even if he had his back to him. His physical fitness after 6 virus transformations was better than that of Weskier, who had just successfully fused the virus. Don't forget that he still has a biological chip in his brain, which can calculate the enemy's attack trajectory within 1/10 of a second and make the simplest and most labor-saving counterattack. After pouring the red wine into the glass, Isaac picked up the glass again, turned around and looked at Weskier, who was bowing his head. Isaac elegantly sipped the red wine and said, Weskier, no matter how hard you try, the gap between you and me is something you can't catch up with. Do you understand? Hearing this, Weskier, as if stimulated, suddenly raised his head and glared at Isaac fiercely. Before the two could continue to talk, the door of the office was pushed open. Jiujiu and the other 2 walked in from outside the door. Jiujiu looked at Weskier squatting in the corner with doubt. He looked at Isaac, who was holding a red wine glass and drinking red wine, not taking Jiujiu and the other two seriously at all. Without waiting for Jiujiu to speak, Isaac raised the red wine glass in his hand to Jiujiu, nodded to Jiujiu very gentlemanly and said, "Hello, I have wanted to meet you for a long time. Can you tell me who you are?" Jiujiu took 2 steps forward, looked at Isaac and said, "Well, I have heard of you for a long time. You are Isaac, the big boss of the umbrella, right? Well, you are really good at pretending." Hearing this, Isaac did not have the slightest expression of anger, but smiled slightly and said, "Oh, big boss. The description is very appropriate." At this moment, another man rushed in from outside the door, making quite a noise, attracting everyone in the room to look at the newcomer. After seeing the newcomer clearly, Jiujiu was also slightly surprised, but he did not expect that the newcomer was actually the commander, Ji. Seeing Ji rushing in, Jiujiu was a little surprised. He had clearly left Werewolf and the others in the corridor to prevent others from coming in to disturb him from killing Isaac. How did Ji get into the office through Werewolf and the others? The doubts in his heart had not been answered yet. Ji rushed into the office and first glared at Jiujiu and the other two fiercely, then quickly walked past Jiujiu and the other two, came to Isaac and bowed and said, "I'm sorry, boss. I couldn't stop these 3 people." Isaac waved his hand to stop Ji from continuing, looked at Jiujiu and said, "Can we sit down and talk?" Hearing this, Jiujiu shook his head and said contemptuously, "There is nothing to talk about. There is an old saying in China called, 'People with different paths cannot work together.' Meaning, we have different codes of conduct, so there is no need to be the same person. Then, please try your best to resist next." Obviously, Jiujiu has not realized that Isaac at this time is no longer the Isaac in the original play, who has no ability a year after the virus outbreak. After saying that, Jiujiu rushed straight to Isaac. Behind him, Alice and Ada Wong also moved. However, Alice's target is Weskier, who is squatting in the corner, because she felt a very strong and familiar smell of the virus from Weskier. Ada Wong's target is also Isaac. After all, the person she hates the most is Isaac, and killing him personally is her greatest wish. Of course, Ada Wong's speed naturally can't catch up with Jiujiu. She rushed to Isaac before Jiujiu rushed out. Jiujiu punched without hesitation, aiming at Isaac's chin. Originally, Isaac was sure that he could kill him with 1 punch, but he never expected that when Jiujiu's fist was about to hit his chin, Isaac tilted his head back slightly and dodged the punch. This was not over yet. In Jiujiu's surprised eyes, Isaac's hand quickly reached out and came to Jiujiu's chest in the blink of an eye. With a punch, Jiujiu was knocked back 3 steps and hit Ada Wong, who caught up. Ada Wong cried out in pain with a sound of ouch, and it was obvious that this collision really hurt her. Jiujiu, who was stopped by Ada Wong, looked at Isaac with a puzzled look. Seeing that he looked calm and invincible, he immediately guessed that this was not the Isaac he was familiar with in the play, so he asked, "Have you injected the T-virus? And have you transplanted the biochip?" Hearing this, Isaac's eyes showed an admiring expression, raised his hands and applauded, saying, "Awesome. After just 1 fight, you figured out my true identity. I have to say you are really attentive. But..." After a pause, Isaac's voice continued, "But you know it too late. From the moment you entered this office, you were wrong." Before the sound fell, Isaac's figure had disappeared. Jiujiu's nervous reaction was pretty good. He had already sensed Isaac just after he disappeared. Sensing the wind blowing in front of him, Jiujiu immediately bent his elbow to cover his face. The next second, with a bang sound, Isaac's figure reappeared, and his fist hit Jiujiu's elbow. A heavy punch hit Jiujiu's body, causing him to tilt to the right uncontrollably. Behind him, King Ada also rushed up, raised his leg and kicked Isaac. Isaac took a step back slightly, raised his right hand up like lightning, and caught the ankle kicked by King Ada, and raised it slightly. King Ada's body tumbled into the air, and Jiujiu also punched Isaac at this time. Isaac originally planned to kill King Ada with the next blow, but was forced to give up his plan to kill King Ada by Jiujiu's punch. There was no way, facing Jiujiu's punch, the data given by the biochip was that he could not directly bear the power of the punch. Otherwise, after receiving this punch, he will fall into passive defense. In fact, it was also the first time that Jiujiu truly displayed his full strength. Not only has the punching force reached 2,500 kilograms, but even the fighting skills have improved a lot than before. Speaking of which, the intermediate combat master did not upgrade after the last upgrade, but Jiujiu felt it. After reaching level 20, his fighting skills are much better than before. Therefore, Jiujiu, who was exerting his full strength, put a lot of pressure on Isaac, and naturally he did not dare to deal with Jiujiu's attack accidentally. Behind him, King Ada nimbly performed several somersaults in the air, readjusted his body's center of gravity, and landed perfectly on the ground. $149 cracked the biochip. When Ada Wong fell to the ground and was about to rush up again to help Jiujiu deal with Isaac, he heard Jiujiu shout, "Ada Wong, I will deal with Isaac, you deal with that G." Hearing this, Ada Wong, who had already rushed out a step, paused and just met Ji, who was already rushing towards her. Google search reading. The two of them fought together without saying a word. It must be said that both of them are very powerful among ordinary people. Although this fight was not as thrilling as Jiujiu and Isaac, it was also very entertaining. Google search TWKAN. On the other side, the fight between Alice and Weskier was not so pleasing to the eye. After all, Weskier opened his four-petal mouth and ejected his tongue with meat thorns from his mouth from time to attack Alice. Alice used the same dog-legged double knives as Jiujiu to dodge and chop, but she could not hurt Weskier for the time being. That's right, Weskier's physical fitness is about the same as Alice's now, and neither of them can do anything to the other. For a while, the spacious office was divided into 3 battlefields, and 6 people fought against each other. Jiujiu was getting more and more depressed at this time. There was no way, fighting with Isaac was really hard. Isaac could always predict his attack direction before he made a move. Even if Jiujiu's attack speed was super fast, Isaac always dodged and counterattacked before the attack was imminent. And every time Isaac counterattacked, he always had to consume a lot of physical strength, relying on extraordinary perception to prepare defense in advance to avoid Isaac's attack. But even so, Jiujiu still couldn't avoid Isaac's attack 100%, and was punched or kicked by Isaac from time to time. Fortunately, although Isaac's physical fitness was good, it was not better than Jiujiu, so although Jiujiu was hit by several punches and kicks, he relied on his super high physical fitness and did not suffer any serious injuries. However, it was still painful where it should hurt. Maybe it's because the spiritual attribute is high enough. Even in the battle, Jiujiu can still communicate with Red Queen with 2 minds at the same time. How about Red Queen, it's been so long, can't you crack Isaac's biochip? Sir, it's almost done, give me a little more time, I can crack his computing program. Hearing this, Jiujiu did not blame Red Queen. After all, Red Queen's focus is different. She is best at the direction of biochemical technology, unlike the biochip in Isaac's brain, which focuses on combat. However, Jiujiu is very confident in Red Queen. After all, whether it is White Queen or the biochip in Isaac's brain, both are developed based on Red Queen's program, but in essence they are not much higher than Red Queen. In this way, it is not a problem to crack the biochip just to give Red Queen a little time. Jiujiu is depressed because of this bagel-like biochip. Strictly speaking, the function of the biochip is similar to the ability to predict the future. Imagine that if you can predict the opponent's attack every time, will the opponent still have a chance to hit you? That's fine. Even so, as long as your speed and strength exceed the opponent by too much, the effect of this prediction will be greatly reduced, but Isaac not only has a biological chip, but the most important thing is that Isaac has the courage to inject himself with the virus to improve his physical fitness. This is also the real reason why Jiujiu can't defeat Isaac even though he has physical fitness improved by the system upgrade and the skills of an intermediate combat master given by the system. Isaac was very proud at this time. You can see that he is like a top master in the battle, with a confident smile on his face, and looks so leisurely. There is no way. In order to give Red Queen enough time to crack, Jiujiu had to rush up and fight Isaac again and again, and was beaten back by Isaac again and again. After being beaten so miserably for a long time, Jiujiu finally heard the excited shout of the Red Queen in his mind. "Sir, I cracked it, I finally cracked it successfully. Now, sir, please follow my instructions to fight. Take a small step back with your left foot, bend your right elbow and attack head-on." Without any hesitation, Jiujiu immediately followed the instructions of the Red Queen, took a step back with his left leg, bent his right elbow and hit it hard. With a sound of bang, the right elbow clearly hit the air, but suddenly hit the entity. Needless to say, Isaac just appeared at this place, and he was about to punch when he was hit hard on the left side of his face by Jiujiu's elbow. The huge force made Isaac stagger back, and before he could stand firm, Jiujiu had already rushed up quickly according to the instructions of the Red Queen, and hit a series of punches and kicks fiercely. Isaac was like a sandbag, and was beaten to the ground by Jiujiu, without any ability to resist. There was no way. Whenever he relied on the biochip in his brain to take counterattack measures, he would always be cracked by Red Queen one step ahead and restrained by Jiujiu. In fact, if Isaac no longer relied on the biochip to deal with Jiujiu at this time, he would not be so embarrassed and without any resistance. But Isaac was born as a scientist, and his trust in data and technology was far greater than his trust in himself, which led to him not being able to wake up even though he had no defense. On the other side, in the battle between Ada Wong and Ada Wong finally gained the upper hand. Only Alice and Weskier were still fighting each other. Finally, after Jiujiu's violent beating, Isaac was also beaten by Jiujiu and finally fell to the ground. Isaac, who was extremely unwilling, stared at Jiujiu with red eyes and gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "You forced me to do this." After that, he took out a syringe from his suit pocket without hesitation. Before Jiujiu could react, he suddenly stabbed it into his neck and injected all the medicine inside into his neck. Seeing this, Jiujiu couldn't help but cursed shit inwardly. He immediately rushed up, wanting to kill Isaac before the Isaac virus broke out. Jiujiu rushed to Isaac, grabbed Isaac's neck, and lifted his body of more than 100 pounds directly into the air. Just when he was about to pull out the dog-leg knife between his legs to kill him with a knife, Isaac's body suddenly straightened up, his eyes rolled back, and then his whole body began to tremble like a cramp. Jiujiu did not dare to hesitate, and stabbed Isaac's stomach with a knife without hesitation. With a puff, the blade stabbed into Isaac's stomach, and a lot of blood splashed out, splashing all over Jiujiu. The next moment, Isaac let out a beast-like roar, his whole face twisted, and then the right side of his face began to rot rapidly. A lot of pus flowed out from the broken skin, and the eyeball on the right side of his face bulged out, and his face became very hideous. $150 Tyrant Isaac. Before this was over, the fingers of his right hand that were hanging by his side suddenly began to shake violently, like an octopus, and the rootless fingers inexplicably turned into 5 2-meter-long tentacles. Before Jiujiu could pull out the knife, Isaac suddenly raised his right tentacle and wrapped it around Jiujiu's left hand. The sudden change shocked Jiujiu, and he was about to throw Isaac out with shaking hands. But Isaac had already kicked him hard in the air. With a bang sound, Jiujiu received this kick. The huge impact made him unable to hold Isaac's neck anymore, and he was instantly kicked out. Jiujiu was kicked out and knocked over the coffee table in the office before being blocked by the sofa and stopped. Covering his painful lower abdomen, he took a deep breath and looked up at Isaac, only to see him. At this time, Isaac had become a monster, with half of his face rotten and bulging, his right hand had become an octopus-like tentacle, and his body was skewed due to mutation and could not stand upright, which made Jiujiu see this. Realize. At this time, Isaac has become the Tyrant Isaac just like in the play. However, the strength of this tyrant seems to be obviously much more powerful than the mutated Isaac in the play. Enduring the pain in his lower abdomen, Jiujiu quickly climbed up, took out the only remaining dog-leg knife, and carefully watched for Isaac's attack. The mutated Isaac lowered his head and glanced at the dog-leg knife still stuck in his stomach. He stretched out his good left hand, grabbed the handle of the knife, and pulled out the dog-leg knife. Regardless of the blood splattering on his stomach, he threw the dog-leg knife into the corner of the room with a clang. Then he took a step towards Jiujiu, raised his right hand, the tentacle suddenly became straight, and thrust it into Jiujiu's head. With the Red Queen's prompt, Jiujiu hurriedly lowered his body and slashed hard to the upper left with the knife in his right hand. With a pop sound, the tentacles that shot out were slashed by Jiujiu. Two tentacles were chopped off and fell to the ground, exuding a sticky mucus and still squirming. It looked disgusting. Isaac howled in pain when his tentacle was cut off. His left hand suddenly retracted, retracting all the remaining tentacles. The next moment, a large amount of viscous liquid emerged from the severed tentacles, and after a burst of squirming, new tentacles grew back at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing this scene, Jiujiu suddenly felt his head hurt. How to fight this? If he is cut off and regenerated, can he still be killed? There was no way. The previous knife pierced so deep, Isaac seemed to be nothing, as if the blood was not his, as if it was nothing to give birth to a living dragon, and the tentacles could still grow back after being cut off, so how can we kill Isaac? Sack. Thinking of this, Jiujiu was vigilantly guarding Isaac while discussing with the Red Queen. Red Queen, can you estimate Isaac's current state? Sir, we can only roughly surmise Isaac's state at this time. It seems that he is a new species formed by virus fusion and mutation. At present, the main abilities are his mutated tentacles and the rapid regeneration function. My guess is that his key points are still his heart and brain. Once these places are injured, he will be seriously injured if he doesn't die immediately. Well, okay. Isn't that true? Let's try it and we'll find out. After saying that, Jiujiu stopped waiting, waved the dog-leg knife in his hand, and rushed towards Isaac. Isaac's tentacles had grown back. Seeing Jiujiu rushing towards him, Isaac raised his hand and shot the tentacles at Jiujiu without hesitation. During the charge, Jiujiu followed the Red Queen's prompts and swung his body from side to side like a boat cutting through the waves, passing Isaac's hand to attack. As soon as he rushed in front of him, he slashed Isaac's wrist with two knives. Jiujiu's power at this time was so great that he cut off Isaac's wrist with two sword strikes. With a pitiful howl of "ah," Isaac hugged his severed right wrist, with an expression of disbelief and a ghostly look on his face, and quickly backed away. "I'll kill you while you're sick." Jiujiu followed closely, waving the dog-leg knife in his hand quickly as he walked with the knife, forcing Isaac to keep retreating. Finally, when Isaac retreated to the wall, he could no longer retreat, so he had to raise his remaining left hand to block and fight back. It's a pity that he is no match for Jiujiu with his hands intact, and how could he be Jiujiu's match with his disabled hands? After resisting in embarrassment for 3 times, Jiujiu stabbed his heart unceremoniously. The severe pain made Isaac scream like a slaughtered pig, but he did not die immediately. Seeing this, Jiujiu knew that Isaac's heart was not a vital part, and immediately held the handle of the knife with both hands, raised his left foot and kicked Isaac's stomach, and pulled out the dog-leg knife. Isaac seemed to know that Jiujiu was about to kill him, and immediately took advantage of Jiujiu's inability to react in time with both hands and feet, and hit his head hard on Jiujiu's head. There was a muffled sound of bang, and Jiujiu was hit so hard that his vision went dark, and he stepped back involuntarily. Isaac had already taken advantage of this opportunity to escape from the wall. The escaping Isaac did not run out of the office immediately, but rushed straight to King Ada and Ji, who were still fighting. Unceremoniously, Isaac raised his newly grown left tentacle and shot it out. How could Ada Wong, who was fighting with Ji, be on guard against Isaac's sneak attack from behind? His slender white neck was immediately entangled by Isaac's tentacles. Ada Wong screamed, and his body was lifted up by the tentacles and flew in front of Isaac. Isaac blocked Ada Wong in front of him without any hesitation. At this time, Jiujiu also rushed in front of him and chopped him fiercely, aiming at Isaac's head. Seeing Ada Wong suddenly appear in front of him and about to be chopped on the head, Jiujiu hurriedly exerted force in his hands and stopped the blade a centimeter away from Ada Wong's head, and he was even more scared. Ada Wong, who had passed by the god of death, turned pale and grabbed Isaac's tentacles with both hands, trying to break free from the tentacles wrapped around his neck. But unfortunately, although Isaac seemed to have no resistance in Jiujiu's hands, it was effortless to deal with Ada Wong, who was still an ordinary person. No matter how Ada Wong struggled, he could not break free from Isaac's tentacles. Jiujiu was relieved and was glad that the goddess in his heart was not killed by him by mistake. Suddenly, he heard the reminder of the Red Queen in his mind. When he wanted to react, it was too late. Isaac kicked him hard in the lower abdomen, and his body was kicked hard. He flew more than 3 meters away before falling heavily to the ground.